Can you guys hear me now? It helps to actually turn my sound on. Imagine we do like the whole stream. We're like, oh shit, whoops. All right. Well, I'll start saying hello to. There you go. We're very technical here. What's that?
Can't hear Peter.
Can't hear Peter now. Okay. Okay. Let's see. That's good. Oh, you know what? I think I gotta change my desktop audio to this. Maybe that will help. All right, Peter, say something.
Yeah, check.
I think that
chat hear me.
I think you should be able to hear Peter now, right, guys?
Is it showing up in Streamlabs?
It is showing. Yeah, we're getting the thumbs up. Okay. We do the whole stream. We do the whole fucking stream, and like it's just us like miming like the. See, we had no argument against degrowth all along. Oh man. We're very technically proficient here. We're running a tight ship. Yeah. You can expect the best here. Anyways,
you should see our streams. You won't believe our streams. They are the best streams.
I mean, that's why we're late too. We're like, how the fuck do we like show Peter on screen and this on screen, and we're all fucked up. That's all right.
It's all right. It looks good. Like it doesn't seem to have a lot of lag in between me doing things here and there. So
highlighted comments are not working yet. Let's see here. Man, so many oh wait, I think I see the reason why. So many technical difficulties. All right, it should be working now. Yep, there we go. Man, what a show! What a show!
Yeah, I mean, we can call this the pre-show.
Well, that's right. I told Zolway that we had to pad out the first half an hour before he got here. So
I saw that. Yeah.
And all the Muppet Christmas Carol comments.
I was happy to see that. In the new documentary, I keep referring to it as Marvel's Disney's Marvel's.
Like just the computer volume in the bottom right would work.
Okay.
What's going on?
We're still having. Wait, this is the wrong. Man, great. Here we go. I think that should make it a little better.
It's really hating us this evening.
We're pro growth, pro technology. What was that comment? I missed that.
Pro growth, pro technology, and pro nuclear, but Luddites when it comes to streams.
Yeah. Retards when it comes to streams. Oh well.
Yeah. I mean, we get basically everything that is necessary, right?
That's right. I guess as long as you can hear us, that's the important part. But yeah, Muppet Christmas Carol is based. I watch it every Christmas because it's so fucking good. Highly recommend it.
Disney's Marvel's The Muppet Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens.
Oh, that's right. It is Disney, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. You got to hand it to those Disney freaks. Sometimes they know what they're doing.
Well, was it Disney at the time, though? That's the question. I don't know.
That's a good question. I
actually have the answer to.
I think it was the first movie that was made after Jim Henson died, right? Wasn't it the first Muppet movie after Henson passed away? I think.
I want to say yes, because I remember it being a really big deal. The Muppet Christmas Carol?
Yeah, Degrowth is actually a war on Christmas presents. Yeah, totally. Degrowth is just bad in every regard. There's literally no redeeming qualities about it. And that's the stream. All right, it's been great. We'll see you guys later.
all of the technical fighting, and we've gotten it. We're really record time got it done.
Yeah. I mean, so this is a topic that Peter and I have been talking about for a long time. I mean, we talk about it between ourselves constantly, right? Like we're
basically all the time. Like I'm pretty much always sending you guys shit, and your guys are pretty much always sending me shit on this.
I
So
know. It's like we're unpaid researchers for degrowth. Like we know more about this topic than probably most people do at this point, who are
absolutely
who are critical of it. Anyways,
absolutely no, because I came across degrowth. Well, I didn't really. It wasn't degrowth at the time. It was just a lot of antinatalist sentiment that came around in sort of liberal spaces and leftist spaces. Around the time I was starting to make the Very Important Document, the first version of Very Important Documentaries. And the big thing that happened there was I was like, all right, well, the goal here is to move to a higher form of production. The goal here is ostensibly socialism or communism. So this is pretty much the opposite of that. This isn't for people, like this overpopulation concern that seems to be amongst all of the vegan, because at the time leftism was primarily like veganism and not liking Ben Shapiro.
it was chud dunking on the right. I mean, it still is that, but it is getting a little bit more complex now with the degrowth stuff. And it's funny, yeah. Right? Like last year, Thought Slime put out a video about being pretty pro degrowth, yeah. And he was suddenly way out of his depth and was like, "I'm not doing political videos anymore."
Yeah. Well, we did that episode of Pact at where we addressed that stuff, and then like we were on Twitter just like throwing shit up like crazy, like this is this.
That's right.
And like I feel like that got into those circles because every time we did anything at that point, they would just all fucking freak out.
Yeah.
So
well, it's starting like again now with your book.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited about it. I'm so happy about that. But yeah, I think it got back to him, and I think that he got scared that he was out of his depth because he didn't understand what we were talking about, probably. Which is, I mean, that once you actually engage with the things we're talking about, it's pretty clear that these people generally like maybe read some talking points on degrowth and thought, oh, capitalism is about growth, so that means doing the opposite. It's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it does have a huge anti-capitalist bent to it. Mm-hmm. I think the thing that really scared him off was I pointed this out. I don't know if he saw my tweets or anything, but I pointed out how in the comment section of his video, it said the line a bunch. It said the line.
It did.
Growth for the sake of growth is the ideology of a cancer cell. Which is a very famous quote by a guy named Edward Abbey, who was a degrowth anarchist. He was like degrowth before he was like an anarcho-primitivist and a very outspoken racist and Malthusian, like hardcore Malthusian, talking about how, you know, the earth is overpopulated and there's too many, you know, he would mix in the racism with it too. He was like just totally open about being a racist Malthusian, and to see all of Thought Slime's audience repeat that line, I think maybe he was like, oh, maybe I should, maybe if I do this, people are going to debunk me, and that would be bad. Yeah.
Debunked, no.
I go back and forth with feeling bad for Thought Slime. I mean, he's he is ruthless in like his nastiness and putting targets, especially on like our friend Caleb. But also he seems terribly depressed and like he doesn't really want to be doing what he's doing. He just kind of does it just to do it. I don't know.
Well, what happened was, you know, he said something. He called somebody a lunatic in a video, and his Patreon and his Discord went fucking crazy on his ass.
Yeah.
And he had to retract it and apologize for it. And I think that was the moment that started. Yeah. I think that he realized that all of these people had financial control over him.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where that began. And that's also why my Patreon looks like garbage compared to a few years ago.
Yeah, but the ones
I'm just like, these guys are lunatics. These guys are retards.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's right. That's the thing is like, and we saw this with this person B Sativity who did a tweet thread, sort of like debunking, calling us out and sort of debunking degrowth being a Malthusian, connected to Malthusianism.
Yeah, just repeating their talking points. Like uncritically, he read something of theirs and repeated a bunch of that shit.
Yeah. Right, and it got like 400 likes, and all the anarchists were like, "Yes, like updoot or whatever," and retweet, and this is it, sweetie. This is the future. Yeah,
I love that we're the two biggest misinformation spreaders about degrowth, and this bitch didn't even read my fucking book.
I know.
It's an 85-page book that addresses the history leading up to degrowth, and like uses Jason Hickel quotes from his book, connects Jason Hickel's financial interests, shows us why he's doing what he's doing. Yeah. Where he's not talking about something that is very obviously connected to the thing that he's talking about, limits specifically. But it's.
I mean, you've actually read these. You've actually read, like they'll be like, oh, tell me you haven't read any academic papers about degrowth without telling me that you haven't read any academic papers about degrowth. But you actually...
I've read so much shit about degrowth.
I know, right? You've read way more than I have.
Hickel's papers.
Yeah.
I've read Hickel's papers. I've read Hickel's book. Not the new book. Like, he has 2 books, and I don't remember what the first one's called, but Less is More. How Degrowth Will Save the World.
Bridging the Divide, or Dividing something.
Yeah, it's something along those lines.
Yeah.
I've read.
You read Calice's book, right?
Limits, Georgios Calise.
Yeah.
Which I pronounce his name wrong throughout the entire documentary. If that's the right way to say it.
I'm guessing. I have no idea.
I called him Callus.
Callus.
Because it sounded like the word callus. Yeah. So I just figured if I'm saying it wrong, it's fine because it's funny.
It's funny, yeah.
But I read his book, Limits, Why Malthus is Wrong and Why Environmentalists Care. And I've read like a number of papers by a number of these other people, as well as what our favorite man, our recent Bob Jensen.
So many Bobs.
I know. Like, when you're talking about degrowth and eugenics and overpopulation and stuff, like you get a lot of Bobs in your face.
The Bobs come out of the woodwork.
Yeah, they do. Like, there's so many Bobs. You'll never believe how many Bobs.
Oh man.
Now I'm gonna have to not do that every 5 seconds.
So,
but, it's true.
Yeah, it's true.
There's a lot of Bobs.
There's a lot of Bobs.
It's not false. There's so many. There's Bob Jensen, Bob Chipman, and Bob Bridges.
Brigham, the guy who talked about
Brigham.
China.
Yeah, Brigham.
China being overpopulated.
The editor of Raw Story, which is full of degrowth and overpopulation shit.
I know. It's once you see like the Gaia worship and the depopulation narratives, you start to see it everywhere, and you're like, this stuff like has infiltrated all media, right? All angles.
It had, yes. It's infiltrated Chobani commercials. Yogurt.
Yeah, but then they start saying,
is Chobani yogurt or is it Greek yogurt?
But they start calling you crazy. They're like, oh, is a degrowth in the room with us right now? And you're like, yeah, it is. It's fucking everywhere. It kind of is. Yeah. It kind of is.
There's so many like fictional stories that are like good and enjoyable. Idiocracy is probably the best example of it.
Yes.
They kind of preach a eugenic degrowth, overpopulation message with that movie. And it's a great movie. Like, it's unambiguously one of the funniest movies ever made. There's so many fucking incredible lines out of that movie.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. It's that. And that's the thing. Mike Judge, he's kind of just like a lib, basically. But he's a lib that is clearly from, the worker's life he's led. Mm-hmm. So he's one of those libs that kind of like has a lot of sensibilities that are more normal and not the worst thing you've ever heard. But then he's also susceptible to that kind of shit. So it's...
Sure. I mean, I believed in that too. Like I feel like I mention this all the time on my stream that for most of my life, like I loved Idiocracy. It was always listed on, on Facebook. They would have like what your favorite movies are. I'd list like Idiocracy, that movie Koyaanisqatsi, which is kind of a niche movie.
Is that how to spell that? The only time I've ever heard that is in watching the movie.
Oh yeah,
the thing is like
Koyaanisqatsi.
That's the only time I've ever heard anyone say that word.
Well, you know what that means? It's like some I think it's Hopi. It's like some indigenous language that is translates to life out of balance or something like that. So,
oh God.
Yeah, no, the whole movie. And I remember the first time I watched it, I was like 16 and getting high, smoking weed and being like, whoa, we're like a virus on the planet, man. And this is so deep. And yeah, I mean,
the first time I saw it was on Mystery Science Theater 3000. So I didn't get that part of it.
It's like kind of really boring if you're not high, I think, but I don't know. I thought it was.
Or if you're watching it on Mystery Science Theater 3000, it's pretty funny. Like they.
Yeah, actually, that'd probably be with the commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was fun. I did not realize that it was a movie about what it's about at the time, but
yeah. Well, it's.
I mean, there's so much of it though. Like so much.
Yeah.
Like I'll say, like I don't know that ever I explicitly thought like humanity's a virus. We're overpopulated. But I did always think, like, we live in a world where almost nobody ever gets what they need. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a related belief if you don't understand, like, what is actually in play, like scarcity created by a contradictory class line. Or false scarcity. It's not real scarcity.
Artificial scarcity, yeah.
Exactly.
Which
even
capitalism is reliant on.
Exactly. Because, I mean, it in small scale capitalism, there's a real scarcity that it relies on. And that's when, supply and demand can kind of actually function like people are taught that they function. But once you get to large scale production, it just stops. You can't have that because abundance is created and wealth centralizes. Because there is an ownership dynamic at play. The commodity that's produced, the product that's produced, is owned by the owner of the means of production, who can then sell it and profit off of it, or keep it and just rule like an asshole. Like it's really up to them. And once you have that getting into advanced stages, and obviously we're getting ahead of things here, but
we are a little bit. But I mean, that is right. Coming to thank you, Caleb. Coming to a Marxist analysis and realizing it's actually not about we can get rid of this scarcity argument, this false scarcity argument that's created in order to manage the resources, right? And that we can actually unleash the forces of production that were, we came to socialized production and capitalism, and the next stage of economic development is to restrict that inherent contradiction, which creates that artificial scarcity. But yeah, I don't want to jump ahead here.
We're getting way ahead of ourselves just because it's
there's so much. There's like this is literally like
probably not going to be a short stream.
This is like our favorite topic. You and I, our favorite topic.
We talk about this every single day. Like every day. You guys and me are sending shit back to each other about this.
I know. And you've been working on this documentary, which I'm really excited about. I don't want to put too much pressure on because you don't have a date set for it yet. But I'm super pumped.
I'm gonna finish it before midnight tonight. The editing of it.
Oh, nice.
So we're gonna start talking about release stuff soon. I got to talk to Caleb
cool.
about a couple of things with that. We're gonna do a stream the night of. And I want to ask if you want to be involved in that too.
Hell yeah. Actually, you know what? I'm busy that night.
we'll figure out when that night is, and I think that it's gonna. We're also gonna play 2 clips from it here for everybody who sticks around.
Yeah.
So it's a little teaser for everybody in the chat. Don't go.
we have a lot planned for tonight. There's a lot to get through, but so. I wanted to start out the first portion of this, and we kind of already touched on this, about how Peter and I actually are extremely well read on this topic, and we're close to it. I'll first start out by talking about my proximity to the degrowth movement by first showing you guys this thing called the rules.org. And if you're familiar with my work, you might have seen this already, but the rules.org is basically like an advertising, not really an advertising agency, but they do like campaigns, right, to sort of sway public opinion, or that's what they were. I think they've reconstituted into a different group now, but they still conveniently have their website up for us to analyze, which is very nice. So,
yeah, that's a really strange aspect of them. And like, I think it's almost because they think they must have like garnered a very large amount of attention and just want to make sure that people can pass through to Culture Hack Labs or something. I don't know.
Yeah, they have no shame about this, but all the evidence is here of what. So this is a case study for this campaign that they did called Growth or Life, #Growth or Life. And I won't read through this whole thing, but just a little bit here. One of the most challenging aspects of giving birth to a post-capitalist, post-growth alternatives is the inherent cognitive bias that growth is unequivocally good. They wanted to create,
right on, like post-capitalist. That's right. That, like, before we even get into anything, like, I have to say how much of bullshit that is, because all these people talk about redistribution and the Nordic model and all this, but they just refuse to address any kind of ownership dynamic, which is at the center of the primary contradiction.
Well, this is their version of
post-capitalism.
Yeah, this is their version of post-capitalism. This is why people think, oh, the communists are bad. They want to take away all of our stuff. The World Economic Forum is a communist communist conspiracy, because these people call themselves communists, and this is what they mean, is they mean degrowth. So yeah, these guys, they set out to hack the growth narrative and make it so that people think that growth is a bad thing, right? We were familiar with and part of the emerging degrowth movement. Okay, so you get these people here claiming they are part of the emerging degrowth movement. Should I play this clip? It's like 2 minutes long, but this is like
that one. I recently have experience with that clip, so we might as well. It's not that long.
Yeah, it's like 2 minutes. So this is basically their campaign. This is their campaign in a nutshell, to create cognitive dissonance between the idea of growth being a good thing.
Culture hacking.
Our world is a diverse place, brimming with ideas and stories. But isn't it strange? When it comes to economics, for some reason, we've all ended up settling for the same system. A single story: capitalism. Here's the thing. We tend to talk a lot about what it does: private enterprise, advertising, stocks and bonds, the market. But we talk a lot less about the why. What is the deep logic that makes capitalism tick? It all comes down to one golden rule. The purpose of capitalism is to grow more capital. That's it. And where does capital come from? You have to choose to squeeze it out of the world, choose to squeeze it out of the land and the seas, out of the human bodies and the other living creatures, wring it out of time itself. Politicians have a cuddly euphemism for this. They just call it
Putin is bad.
And they tell us it needs to be 3% every year or the system starts to break down. That doesn't sound like much, but 3% per year actually means doubling the size of the global economy every 20 years. Doubling the cars, the smartphones, the air miles, the plastics. It doesn't take a genius to know that we can't have infinite growth on a finite planet. We're already taking far more than can be replaced. And we can see the consequences all around us. Climate change, deforestation, soil depletion, perpetual war, the mass extinction of species. It's got so bad that we're now threatening the foundations of all of life itself. It doesn't have to be this way. In fact, it can't stay this way. We have a choice to make. Prioritize growth or prioritize life. We can't do both. There are so many different options out there. From new types of money that undercut the drivers of growth, to regenerative farming to rebalance our food systems, to new ways of measuring progress and well-being. One thing is clear. The era of treating capital as more important than life is coming to an end, one way or another. If we are going to survive the Anthropocene, it will be because we create post-growth economies that allow us to flourish on this beautiful and generous planet we call home.
So there you guys have it. We just need to make new kinds of money, and we'll be set. We'll be all good.
The Malthus shit is just right there. Like, they talk about how it keeps doubling and doubling. That's exponential growth. That's
we'll all
geometrical
be
growth.
a Dublin. We'll all be a Dublin. That's the Pete Seeger song.
Malthus. That's the thing that Malthus is asserting, and they're
Yeah.
like, no, degrowth is Malthusian. Sorry.
So yeah, they did this. They did this campaign. You could see the foundation of like sort of the logic, right, that they're trying to lay out.
Yeah.
The narrative that they're trying to hack, the post-growth narrative. And in the links and resources, we can see a couple of names pop up a few times. Martin Kirk, Jason Hickel. Martin Kirk, Jason Hickel, Al Norlada, Jason Hickel. So we could see Jason Hickel is a big part of this movement from the very beginning. He is now one of the leading guys, right? He's one of the leading guys in the degrowth movement. He wrote Less is More, Why Degrowth is going to Save the World, or whatever the fuck his stupid book is.
Before we move on from that clip, I want to say, like, that's a 2-minute clip. That felt like forever.
I've watched it.
Like, is this 2 minutes?
I watched it so many fucking times because I use it a lot in the consumerism video. I think it really.
I used it in mine, and like every time I watch it, I can't believe it's 2 minutes. Well, it's 2 minutes 38 seconds. But
guys, go to this page and read it because they brag about how like it's just a marketing campaign to convince you that growth is bad. Even though
that's activism now. That's what
even though you inherently know, you're like, no, growth is good. Like, if you're not growing, you're dying. Like, I mean, this is ridiculous. So, right. So moving on. We've got Martin Kirk and Jason Hickel, right? These guys are the thought leaders of this movement. Martin Kirk and Jason Hickel. And this is from therules.org, right? So
on Fast Company. So obviously really got out there.
Well, let's look at the Rules Foundation. Who funds this? Oh, look at that. It's Mr. Peter Buffett with his daddy Warren Buffett. This is a
screenshot out of my doc there.
Yeah, so interesting.
Obviously, Warren Buffett is underneath that Bob Jensen article that Peter Buffett posted, but we'll get to Bob later. And this Martin Kirk guy who was working with Jason Hickel, who's now the king of degrowth. I wonder what he's up to now. Oh, look at that. He's Senior Special Projects Coordinator for the Novo Foundation here in Kingston, New York. My backyard. What? My backyard. How did he end up with that job? I can't even imagine, given all of the money that Peter Buffett funneled into the Rules, which he was one of the two big guys from. How did he get that job?
We'll never know. We'll never know. Probably from his own merit, you know.
True. I mean, like, that's really what it is. Except for it's the social capital.
Yeah. So
it's who you know.
This is my hometown. This is literally where I live. I'm broadcasting from Kingston, New York. Oh, thank you, John McCarthy. Every time you watch that clip, the time seems to drag on doubles. It does.
Yeah, there's geometrical ratio growth on the time of that video.
Yeah.
The longer you watch it, the slower time moves. It's a time dilation problem.
They're degrowing your free time with that video. So there's this really well-written tablet article about Peter Buffett buying up my hometown and doing the other Peter and doing this let's see. There's actually the word degrowth in here a bunch of times. Doing his degrowth experiment, right? You could say, oh, well, Fox, this is just this one journalist who's calling it degrowth. It's not. He hasn't claimed himself that this is a degrowth experiment. You're not putting words in. Maybe Peter Buffett doesn't know what degrowth is. Oh, really? Well, let me show you this. Let's go to the FAQ page on the Novo Foundation. Here in Kingston,
I was just here too recently too.
Kingston, New York. Where's the thing? What is Novo's view on growth and sustainability? Oh, well, look at this. Right now, despite decades of awareness of climate change and ecological damage, we are actually growing the amount of energy and materials we use every year. So coming back into balance with the environment means reducing those amounts, and that can be seen as a form of degrowing. Wow. So it's almost like I literally live in a degrowth experiment town here, and I actually do know what the fuck I'm talking about. That, you know, all these people who have read these fucking books and do all their Twitter fingers and to do all the tweeting and the writing and the YouTube videos. Well, guess what? Degrowth is my lived experience, and you need to center my voice.
we need to center Fox's voice here. Fox has seen it.
As somebody who has experienced degrowth, I know
you live in a degrowth space.
We are holding space for degrowth.
Yeah.
And just another little oops. Oh shit, I closed the window. And just another fun little thing to show you guys is this guy Tim Parikh, who's another, you know, big name in this is a degrowth star, right? He is one of the thought leaders on degrowth. This guy used to like argue with me all the time too. He used to come into my mentions and be like, degrowth is actually very good. Sacre bleu. So
he's French. Oh, he's French. Yeah, obviously. He's French.
Yeah.
His name.
So he said
I was thinking his name was like Tim Parikh.
Tim Parikh. Timothy Parikh. So he says, he thought he was so clever. He says, oh, my unemployment benefit is soon running dry. Could you hook me up with some of these degrowth billionaires? Because I've been saying for a long time, these billionaires, they love degrowth. They love it. And they're like, you could not possibly love degrowth. But look at this. Look at this. Oh, look at that. Post-Growth Institute, $25,000. Timothy Parikh. Oh, I'm happy to announce I've been appointed a fellow at the Post-Growth Institute. There you go.
I am now a fellow at the Post-Growth Institute.
Peter Buffett, he buys me many baguettes. I am very happy.
Peter Baguette.
So if any of these online anarchists want to claim that I don't know anything about degrowth, I have firsthand experience with these people. I am directly connected to the source here. So suck
You're
my
in
dick.
Degrowth Central. That's really.
I am.
Like there's so much money funneled into degrowth through people who are directly changing the landscape and economy in your area.
Yeah.
Like the fact that people read like a book by a guy who is just very obviously doing marketing for degrowth, and they're like, "Oh, what a great theorist! What a brilliant mind!"
Yeah,
if they don't know what's going on, like, and it's not like I even really know what's going. I just know that whenever I read anything and it sounds like marketing, I'm like, "Oh, this is fake."
I know. Well, you and I both have that like sort of we have the marketing sense radar where we're like, oh no,
yeah.
This is like
no, you're selling me.
Yeah.
You're trying to sell me.
Something's not right here. Thank you, Reestablishment, for the donation. Is Peter's right-wing brother doing degrowth in Illinois? You know, I'm not sure. So Peter Buffett's brother, Howard Buffett, is a more sort of stereotypically right-wing guy. He's a big he's really into the police. I think he's actually like an appointed police sheriff or something. And he's doing his own degrowth, or not degrowth. He's doing his own philanthropy experiment in where is he again, Alex? He's in Illinois.
It's Illinois.
Decatur, Illinois,
isn't it?
Yeah, but we don't hear much. We don't hear as much. I think.
Well, I mean, I think he just got himself into the sheriff's position and is kind of enjoying himself in, like a cowboy hat or something.
Mm-hmm. He definitely
got some spurs on his boots.
Yeah, he's invested in like agriculture too, just like Peter is, but I don't know if he's doing like degrowth agriculture, biodynamic agriculture, like Peter Buffett is.
Nazis?
Like the Nazis.
Oh, sorry, like Peter Buffett.
Yeah. I also have Peter's tweet up on the screen, which was great. This mine's bigger.
Oh my God, that made so many people angry.
I made them so mad.
My favorite part about the response to this tweet is people saying that the book isn't actually bigger because clearly it has less pages. And it's like, okay, first
well,
off,
you were lowering your page consumption.
Yeah.
Shouldn't they be for that?
Exactly. You're saying that less is more. So I'm going to say that my book is officially, by your own standards, more.
Exactly.
Second off, it's a joke about the dimensions of the format of the book. His book is a 5x9x7 book. Mine is a 6x9. That's the joke. And it's just, and this is me being way too pedantic in explaining it. But yeah. I'm only doing that because they are about 3 or 4 times as pedantic trying to take my joke down.
I'm trying to find a good one. Now let's see it from the side. Tweets. Yeah. All right, I'll look at the quote tweets.
The quote tweets have all the really good ones. Like they were trying to get some social capital off of it.
They're just saying this is just boring stuff where they're just being mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, here you go. Clearly see yours is less than 100 pages, most of which is probably misrepresent actual degrowth positions.
That's what I like the best about it. This is how they debunk things. They just say it's probably this.
It's probably.
They don't read it.
I know.
They pretend that they're an expert on my book because they've read his book.
When they get mad at you, they're like, "Oh, you didn't do the reading. You didn't, sweetie. You didn't do the reading."
It's like, "Oh, my friend. Oh, my friend."
And then you're like,
you knew.
You're like, I wrote a fucking book. How about that? And they're like, oh, I'm not gonna read it. Like,
yeah.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't with these people, huh?
Yeah. No, there's no way for them to actually care what I have to say. So it's whatever.
They can't. Well, that's really, it shows that they don't actually have confidence in what they believe because they're not willing to be rigorous about their preconceived notions. Alex is putting the nerd emoji on the screen. I gotta show that video that Alex quote tweeted.
I'm sorry, but your book appears to be of a page count lesser than 100. And I shall tell you the page count of Jason Hickle's book. It's 326 pages.
The less pages, the less correct it is.
He's using more paper, so like, isn't that a problem?
It is.
Like I'm using slightly larger cut paper, but I'm definitely not using more paper than Jason Hickle.
Your font size is bigger too, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was also part of the joke. But there's not as many pages in the book.
Well, then it's not correct.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking we could go over this thread. I mean, it's a really silly thread. It doesn't really make very good arguments. So, but let's go. This person got.
I think this is a good way to go through like what they try to argue against when we've put forward like an actual argument. Like they just ignore it and say this shit.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go through it. So degrowth basics thread. Debunking. There we got the debunking. Okay.
Debunked!
Degrowth is concerned with exponential growth rates required by the profit mode of capitalism that are divorced from actually existing human needs and ecological sustainability. Degrowth does not care about population. Here's why.
I mean, you really don't have to listen to Bob Jensen for very long for that to be out the window.
Exponential growth rates required by the profit motive of capitalism that are divorced from actually existing human needs. So I mean, there's like a kernel of truth in all of this, right? The human need, right? Is that like,
well, that's the clever aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the economic system that we have now of capitalism is not set up to serve the vast majority of the population's human needs, right? But it's funny how the exponential growth rates thing, you could say it's the Malthusian argument, but just sort of pushed on to profit, right? Instead of talking about people, it's talking about the growth of the economy, right?
Yeah.
But continuing on, due to the profit incentive, companies are driven to produce more than what's necessary, and demand is artificially created for these products people don't need through marketing.
True.
Right.
Right. That's exactly what marketing is.
Right.
Correct.
I think this person too has followed both of us for a little bit of time and has internalized parts of the arguments that we make, but it's not good enough. Yeah. It's not good enough. Keep trying. This leads to overaccumulation of useless products that are thrown out in the garbage.
I guess that's true too. I mean,
sure, right. Overproduction.
Maybe not due to profit incentive though.
Right. Even if companies / corporations aren't able to sell and have an excess of a particular product, which almost always happens, the low cost of production, in addition to higher prices, mostly guarantees high returns with a profit margin. Overproduction becomes cost effective. I wouldn't ever say that overproduction ever becomes cost effective. Overproduction is always going to be written off as like cutting into your bottom line. I don't think that overproduction is ever going to be cost effective.
If you produce more than you can sell, that's a problem, unless you've got such a silly margin on the thing that it doesn't matter. But like, I mean, we'll talk about the falling rate of profit later.
Right.
That's exactly why that's not true.
Right. As you can imagine, this results in an excess that is thrown out in the garbage. With food, we produce many times more than our current population needs. If otherwise edible and healthy food doesn't sell due to excess or being unappealing, it is thrown out in the garbage. Now, I would say that it's not getting thrown out to create a profit. It's getting thrown out because our system doesn't know how to rationally
it's not
distribute.
Exactly. The distribution is basically essentially entirely anarchic. It has nothing to do, like, if people need something somewhere, that isn't necessarily a reason why it will be supplied in that place. Like, there has to be other reasons why somebody would put something there, either to create a dependency or to make money.
Yeah, it's not like capitalists are like, ha ha ha, it's so funny when we throw things out and make money from it.
I made so much money at my Dunkin' Donuts franchise by throwing out all of the donuts we didn't sell at the end of the day. I mean, I'm rich.
They'd rather limit the production first.
Exactly.
To create false scarcity, which would make the value of the thing go up. The more they produce, the less money they can get for it, because
again, that's the falling rate of profit. You start seeing that you can produce at a certain capacity. I mean, again, this is something we'll detail later, but you produce something at a certain capacity, you can make a certain amount of money, and then you continue to produce at that capacity because people want that product. But as technology progresses, the amount of money that goes that they'll pay for it goes down more or less. There are reasons for that we'll get into later. But
yeah, keyword technology plays a really big part in understanding why degrowth is Malthusian and anti-Marxist stance to anti-socialism stance to take, and it does not jive with socialism or transitioning to a higher mode of production because of the technology question. So this issue is exacerbated by competition due to competing companies making superfluous amounts of the same product. If one company fails, their stock is wasted. There's no evidence, though, that a nationalized economy would be enough to solve overproduction, which is funny because it's like, why not? You're kind of like cutting off that option, which is
that tweet right there is massively contradictory.
Yeah.
The issue is exacerbated by competition, which is something that would be solved by nationalizing that industry. So if that is like, if that's something that stops the exacerbation, then the theory here is that stops all of these companies from. And also, I don't think that point is genuinely a good point either, because I feel as though companies tend not to produce at scale in the way that they did maybe 10, 20 years ago. We have so much more on-demand production going right now because of the supply chain, the way the supply chains work now. Much more of it is done on demand, and things are manufactured in smaller runs. So you don't do this specifically because of what this person is saying is happening, but it would only hypothetically happen. Like maybe at some point it happened a few years ago, but they're like, oh, well, now we know exactly how many things people are going to order at this time, so we can make exactly that amount or near that amount. And that's not how global production works anymore. It's still mass production. It's not mass production. It's just much more, and this is actually the big problem. It's much more akin to a planned economy, except for you maintain the anarchy of production and an anarchic distribution model.
Yes, that's a really good way to put it, because it is, we are much closer to everything being, and this is why you get that picture that everyone likes to refer to where they have the canned fruit that says it was grown on one side of the country, then packaged on another side of the country, then shipped back to the other side of the country. And all these things are sort of optimized out of a number game that isn't really to optimize the human need and experience. It's more just you're right, anarchy of the market combined with sort of a planned economy now. Reestablishment. Thank you for the donation. Doesn't China's lack of market crash since the 80s show that overproduction can be managed? Yeah, I mean, there's so much that we can look to China to say, like, this is actually how we can transition our economy away from the anarchy into something much more stable where everyone is much happier. And this is something that I wanted to talk about later, was that these degrowth narratives do ultimately serve as anti-China narratives, but I don't want to jump too far ahead.
China is another good point here, because China also has a sort of market, not a full-ass market economy. There's a lot of planned aspects to it. And the difference between that and what we're doing basically everywhere else is that the planning and all of that is done by a state that is run by a much more accountable electoral system to the actual people, as opposed to, and you could say it's run by a communist party that is it's representative from more or less a kind of Soviet model. It's not quite the Soviet model, but the difference there is that makes it centralized and planned in a way that yes, there are aspects of the supply chain that make it kind of like a planned economy, but it retains the anarchy of production and an anarchic distribution model, in that there's not actually a centralized force, A, and B, all of the forces making decisions are accountable only to the owning class. They're not accountable to the people. They aren't run by the Communist Party. They aren't run by something that's actually accountable to the mass of people that don't own, or rather don't actively exert control over the means of production.
The way I like to think about it is that China's not even that much different from us. The biggest difference, I think, is that the government operates on the behest of the people to control the economy, whereas the other way around here is like the economy controls our government to control the people. You know, it's just a reverse sort of the government just operates.
And people like to talk about
different
decentralization. They love to talk about decentralization as like
a solution
adjacent to growth and also a solution to all these problems. But what we have is like a decentralized planned economy. Yeah. So like everybody making plans is all in a bunch of different buildings and a bunch of different companies. They all hate each other. So like it's idiotic the way that they're making plans. But like that's the difference between ours and China's. The planning is done by state bodies that are accountable to the people.
Yeah. Well, continue on this thread. Where did I leave off? We're down to degrowth aims to abolish the profit motive and bring down production rates to a level that is sufficient for the population and ecological sustainability through localized, cooperative, democratic systems. The problem it sets out to solve is production for the sake of profit. So there's a lot in this one that I think is
is the meat of it, right?
Yeah,
here.
It really is.
This is really why degrowth is pretty much fascistic. Like it's literally right in that tweet.
Yeah, so let's go like the line by line. Degrowth aims to abolish the profit motive. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't. Like it asserts that growth and the profit motive are the central aspects. Yeah, they're the same thing, and they're the central aspect of capitalism.
They believe the propaganda that film that I showed in the beginning.
Exactly. Like, and they think so. There are capitalists, and they're greedy, and they want more money. And that is the reason why we keep exponentially using more of the planet's resources, which is bad. And it's not for any other reason than their greed. It's a motive. It's a human thing that people want. And you can abolish it by telling them to stop it. Cut it out. Quit it.
Just stop it.
Yeah. No more of that, mister.
But also bring down production rates to a level that is sufficient for the population, which is a fucking insane thing to say when so much of the world is underproducing.
Over half of the world is living on near nothing compared to what the developed world lives in.
Yes. No, we need to grow our production. We do not need to degrow our production. And I know a lot of these degrowthers will throw in a caveat about the global north versus the global south, but it's bullshit. It's not like, oh, if we stop our production, then all of a sudden Africa is going to blossom. It's not how it works. It's not how
you can't do production on trade. We're going to stop producing 57% of our energy here so that they can do 27% more.
Well, because the inherent logic here is that there's a limit to how much there is. It's that scarcity coming in again.
Sum.
It's the scarcity model coming in again, which is that artificial scarcity that the capitalist mindset has, right? That there always needs to be that artificial scarcity in order to prevent the crash of the markets, the falling rate of profit, right? We have to make sure that there isn't too much and there isn't a glut in the market and that it becomes so cheap and abundant that everyone can have one. We need to hold back the forces of production. That's literally what fascism is. The fact that this person says that, another thing is that they want to say sufficient for the population and ecological sustainability, which also indicates to me this problem of seeing those two things as separate, as seeing humans and ecology. No, it's all one and the same thing. You cannot divide these things. Once you do, you start saying that humans are a virus on the planet.
Well, exactly. And they start with the again, and this is something that you could very easily, when they're saying things like we have to scale down production, and the reason that it's at the scale it's at is for profit, the profit motive. the thing is, profit isn't even actually a defining characteristic of capitalism. It's a thing that happens because of capitalism, not a thing that capitalism happens because of. The defining characteristic of capitalism is its central contradiction. It's the thing that creates class. This is the thing that distributes people into different classes, which is the socialization of production. So you have factories or whatever the fuck you want to call Starbucks. You have a bunch of people doing a thing, and the privatization or retaining of the feudal mode of appropriation, you could also call it that, but the private retaining of both the product and the profit. And the product is actually the more important aspect because the profit comes from the product.
Yeah. The social,
and if you don't think of it that way,
value. Yeah.
Exactly. If you don't think of it that way, if you don't actually understand this contradiction, because this contradiction is the dialectic that is going on in capitalism. It is the struggle which defines the capitalistic era. As all history is, it is a series of class struggles. This is the class struggle that defines capitalism. The people who are selling their labor versus the people who own the means and retain the product in order to do with it what they will, which oftentimes is sell it for a profit. But you can't do that without owning the product.
Yeah, it's a they're focusing on the money part of it. It is like
it's not about the money.
It's not, right. If anything, we do want to make money obsolete, and we want to make money almost worthless, right? Which is a good thing to make, that's the funny thing about inflation and wage stagnation. And you and I have actually talked about this, right? Where it's almost like a good thing that it's a sign of things moving in a direction where we do want to make money obsolete, because what it's really about is the thing, right? The thing that is being produced that is useful to society, to people. The money is just an in between sort of thing that gets in the way.
It's a mediating force. That's literally all it is.
Right. And the funny thing,
it's technically a commodity itself, but it's a commodity that mediates all other commodities.
Right. Well, and then the funny thing is that nationalization is actually the first step in reversing those incentives and and removing that sort of profit incentive from it. It's saying, no, we just need to create in order to provide for people. So the last sentence, the problem it sets out to solve is production for the sake of profit.
That's viewing everything so small. That's like, it's viewing it at the individual capitalist level. Like, what is that guy's morals? Is he greedy? Does he just want to make this thing so he can make money? It's like criticizing somebody on Twitter for making a book debunking degrowth for just wanting to make money or something.
Which is why they like nonprofits, right?
Exactly.
Because there's no profit involved, right?
Well, that means it's not capitalist. It's post-capitalist, right?
It's neo-feudal is what it is.
It is.
Right. So they're hung up on, this person is hung up on, it's to grow. You can almost hear the video playing as they're saying, the purpose of capitalism is to grow more capital and profits. Of course, it's British too, right?
It's got to be British, yeah. Or whatever. Isn't Hickle South African or something? He's got a very odd accent.
Yeah, I think he's South African, but it's degrowth with a very, very small d.
Small d degrowth. Mine's bigger.
Got to degrow the d. If you noticed, I said nothing about a problem with population. Well, got us there, right? It's because there isn't one. It isn't relevant. Okay. It isn't relevant to degrowth or ecological sustainability. I think a lot of people would disagree with that. Why would I mean, obviously we wouldn't, but why would I bring this up? Because there are propagandists claiming degrowth is Malthusian. That's us.
Yeah.
That's us.
I guess he's correct in that it's not actually relevant to degrowth or ecological sustainability. because degrowth is bullshit and ecological sustainability isn't really anything that, like, they don't even know what that really is. Like,
I mean, look at China. Take guidance from China. They're the ones who are doing ecology the right way, because they're like, we're just doing what's good for human beings. That's what it should be.
Does it work 24/7 does it always work? No, but that's the goal. That's why they are producing. That's the planning that they're expanding their economy with. It's all specifically, like, they raise people out of poverty in that country at an astounding rate, you should see the rates.
Such good rates. The best
such
rates.
Good rates. They're raising people out of poverty in such incredible rates. You wouldn't believe rates. But it's true though, that, like, and we aren't doing that. We are not raising anyone out of, like, we're pushing more people into poverty in this country. The middle class, the so-called middle class, I don't like using the words middle class a whole lot, but, like, if we're going to use the liberal terminology, the middle class is shrinking. It's shrunk by something like 3 or 4% in the last 10 years. It's not, it's becoming smaller faster. We're pushing more people into poverty in this country.
Yeah. Yep. So let's compare. Thomas Malthus was a 19th century scholar who was interested in the issue of poverty. He blamed overpopulation. He denied that there was institutional or an economic cause, and he didn't believe that the poor could improve their lot in life.
So we know he hasn't read an essay on the principle of population.
He believed that
that's not the point of the book at all. Like, overpopulation, he didn't blame poverty on overpopulation. Poverty was the justification for the system that produced overpopulation.
Right.
And also, he was intentionally justifying the aristocracy and propagandizing against the French Revolution, which, as we know, was the bourgeois revolution that created capitalism.
I mean, this is exactly what Hickel is doing too. It's not like Hickel is creating an ideology that is justifying what is already happening.
Exactly. Well, that's what Malthus was like. Malthus and Hickel are the same thing. Like, Malthus was a paid sycophant of the aristocracy, who was basically there to tell the capitalists, the new emerging class of owning, like, industrialists, that they needed to be subservient to the aristocracy, and that the working / impoverished people needed to basically be treated like shit, so that more of them would die, and
it's just the natural. Less. It's just the natural way of things, Peter. It's just the natural way.
Yeah, and we can get there. Then there's Callus, who, like,
we have to work. We have to work with nature, not against her. We have to work with her. We have to center Mother Gaia's voice, Peter.
Yeah.
We have to make our footprints as small as possible.
Gaia was played by Whoopi Goldberg too, so at least it's a decent voice.
Really? Wait, in what?
In Captain Planet.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that show was made by a Malthusian. They had a whole
boy was it.
They had a whole episode on overpopulation.
Oh my god, the rat shit.
The rat people. Yes.
Oh god.
That's right.
Please go in on Callus. We have a bunch of, like, Callus quotes.
You know, I forgot to bring those up, but there was just, like, so much. I was, like, scrambling for this.
There's so much of it. That's the thing. It's this book. I guess I'll lay into him right now, because in some ways, like, misunderstanding what Malthus was doing is basically Callus's job. And B. Sativity misunderstands Malthus in a slightly different way. B. Sativity thinks that Malthus was attempting to say that poverty was caused by overpopulation, which in some ways is true when you consider the false scarcity produced. When you have a surplus, or when you have a shortage of jobs and too much labor, that's kind of what you could construe that to mean. That if there's too many people and not enough jobs, you could claim that poverty was because of overpopulation, but it's not really a one-to-one thing. I don't think that really completely maps. But poverty, like Malthus's point wasn't to explain poverty. It was actually, in a lot of ways, to punish the impoverished. Like, the impoverished were the problem. They couldn't, like, he didn't, like, the way that I just equated poverty and overpopulation to a labor surplus and not enough jobs, he did not even get close to that, because his claim was that the impoverished were lazy and couldn't,
there was something inherently wrong with them. Yeah.
Yes, they're lessers. They're well,
it's easy to see how racism comes out of this too, right?
Well, exactly, and it's not even him that started that. It was actually in the 1600s. There's a gentleman who, I can't remember his name right now, but he wrote a book on the state of England, and that's where they started to use. That's where race came out of. That's where the term. I mean, they didn't use this term then, but they called them waste people, and that eventually evolved into white trash. Like, that's where that term came from. But the waste people were just inherently a problem. They were inherently lazy. And that was the problem that caused the poverty here. It wasn't overpopulation. Overpopulation was a result of production methods growing and being able to sustain more people. And eventually, he would, like, his assumption was that because we were giving people more, they were going to overpopulate because people could now survive.
Right.
Like, poverty, they're like, these are two contradictory ideas. Like, we're giving them too much because we've raised their standard of life, blah, blah, blah. But also poverty is somehow a result of this. To me, that's two contradictory ideas where Beasativity doesn't understand. Now, Callus, who wrote Limits, why Malthus was wrong and why environmentalists should care. And when I say misunderstanding, I'm just fully want to say that I believe this is cynical and he doesn't actually think this. I think that he intentionally read Malthus this way.
Well, they have to create, and this is what this thread is. This is what they all do, is they say, no, actually, they have nothing to do with each other.
Yes. His misread of Malthus is that Malthus was advocating for population growth, which is
he's an anti-Malthusian Malthus.
Yes,
Thomas
he's
Malthus.
A pro-natalist somehow. Like, because in the Bible tells that God told us to reproduce and populate the earth. That is the motive that Callus ascribes to Malthus. And again, like, if you go into Malthus, like, he offers ideas as to how to spur on the death rate. Like, he doesn't want more people at all. Like, he's outwardly multiple times. Like, he advocates moving poor villages to, like, stagnant pools and teaching poor people not to be cleanly so they contract more diseases. Like,
you mean like celebrities telling people to shower less and things like that?
Exactly. So that's why Mila Kunis and
Ashton Kutcher.
Why? That's why they're accidentally repeating Malthusian propaganda, because they want to be dirty. They just like being dirty. Don't blame them. Like, it's whatever. But gotta
save the water.
Yeah, gotta save the water. There's not enough water on this fucking planet, which is mostly water. But that's like, he claims that Malthus wants more population and that he is this free market advocate. When, if you've read Malthus, the bitch does not want the free market to just, like, run rampant. He wants to serve the aristocracy. He wants it specifically to be a method of subservience to the aristocracy.
He's an anti-capitalist.
Yes, not for the right reasons, mind you. But, like, he is. This is why, I mean, it's not exactly one-to-one how the neo-Malthusians are advocating neo-feudalism. It's not one-to-one, but Malthus was advocating feudalism more or less.
Yeah.
He wanted capitalism not to become a dominant mode and wanted it to subserve the feudal order.
Well, they've inverted, the neo-Malthusians sort of inverted the culture war issues where, they criticize Malthus for being, Christian or whatever and saying like people should, birth control is bad and that people should just fuck and have children as much as possible. Whereas the neo-Malthusians were very much into birth control. It was like the big issue for them because it's a women's liberation kind of thing. And it seems more of just
I think the women's liberation part is more of a convenient excuse for them. I think that it's all about population in their heads.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just to be clear, whenever I talk about this, I'm always very careful to say, I think that birth control in a capitalist economy is a necessity because you are fucked if you don't have money and you conceive. You're fucked. Like if you can't try to prevent that. And like, I do agree that people want to have sex and not have kids. I don't think that that's wrong. And I'm not religious. That's not an issue for me. And I think that in the economy and the society that we live in, it makes sense that we have birth control and abortion and those things, but we shouldn't fetishize
They shouldn't be coerced.
Yes. They're tools that both can kind of fight coercion and in some aspects are also a means to enforce another coercion, the economic coercion. Like a lot of the time people get abortions not because they don't want kids, but because if they brought a kid into this world, it would be irresponsible of them because they wouldn't be able to feed them.
Well, it's like the maid thing where they're assisting people with their own suicides because it's an economic burden to stay alive.
Exactly. Death control.
Right.
But the whole point here is that these people don't see any of that stuff. And this is also why I don't love birth control and abortion advocates at the mainstream level, because they're also never talking about the economic coercion.
Right.
It's never actually, like they say it's about body autonomy, but like body autonomy, how? Like what force is at play here? They're never talking about it. And that leaves even everybody who does understand it that way susceptible to any of this Malthusian shit, because they are so happy to talk about women's liberation and all of that to justify what is ultimately a means for them to advocate against a growing population and against, I guess, all forms of growth at this point, because they don't seem to really care. And that's the other thing. It's not, when they say it's not about population, which this person has said, like, I think 2 or 3 times at this point, it is about energy production, which is why there's a population of the size that we have today. Like, we don't have 8 billion people randomly.
Well, I think
that just didn't happen.
That's an important thing that I want to talk about too, is that so Malthus was proven wrong, right?
Yes.
Through these revolutions of industry and technology. So it's almost like Malthusianism, which is something that's existed even before Malthus. It had to sort of repackage itself, and this is how it's how it comes out now as a form, as degrowth, as a critique of overconsumption and consumerism, and things like that. It's the same narrative. It's just playing out with a few different actors, a few different storylines, but it has the same through line. And I do want to actually get to that. Let's finish this thread, and then I'm going to show a clip of your video, because I think there's an important thing to take away from this thread. So let's see, where were we? So talking about Malthus, he believed there would always be a class of miserable, impoverished class of people as long as the population was left to its own devices, that the poor were primarily responsible for population growth due to irresponsible sexual activity. Degrowth proposes that overproduction, profit, capitalism in general is a danger to humanity and is responsible for ecological destruction, seeing that's the priority for these people. Malthus believes that overpopulation is responsible for poverty. These things are not the same.
How is it responsible for poverty if the poor were primarily responsible for population growth due to irresponsible sexual activity? Like, how can you read those two tweets next to each other and not understand that they're contradictory? Like, no, either it's one or the other. Like, overpopulation is responsible for poverty, or the poor are responsible for overpopulation. It's not like this person is contradicting themselves over the course of two tweets. They've done it over the course of one tweet multiple times already, but like, this is gobbledygook.
Yeah. I think that this whole profit thing is what really gets away from them. Let's just look at
You need to go to bed.
Let's look at Peter's cool profile.
Go out of here.
Oh, the kids.
Sorry, the kids have burst in.
The damn kids. Go to bed, Gooby. But look, I love when they make fun of my profile, because look at how based my profile is. So good. I'm like, oh, shit is so good. You got the Russian flag, got the American flag, we got the China flag, we got the nuclear cooling towers. It's just so based. So based. I love my profile. So
that's a good image. It really, you can't argue that image.
Yeah. I love our anti-bike emojis too.
Yeah, we win.
So
that's simple.
So I think this person is really focusing on the profit thing, right? And falling rate of profit.
They all are.
Is an important thing to talk about here. So I'm going to play a clip from Peter's upcoming documentary, and then we'll talk about it. So
just to quickly set this up.
Yeah.
This is immediately following an explanation that value comes from labor. That is the necessary thing to know going into this.
Okay.
Technology and technique develop. What was once handmade becomes machine-made. This development alone causes things to cost less to make. When a material that takes labor to be mined and refined can be replaced with plastic, we find the further reduction of labor continuing to reduce the cost. Capitalists who get to technological innovations first are the ones who benefit most from this lowered production cost, as the new technology takes time to become adopted as the production standard. Once it does, all the would-be competing products cost the same or nearly the same to make, and so it costs less to buy, because not only does this process cause inflation, but people aren't going to pay a premium for something that's not made how it used to be. Despite this, demand for a product that people need will likely stay the same. Even if the demand for something stays the same, while less labor is required to produce it, the value of that thing still goes down. Therefore, the profit margin goes down, as capital must produce the same numbers of this now cheaper thing to fulfill demand. This is called the falling rate of profit. It is baked into our economic system. It is totally unavoidable, assuming technology progresses. Because of this, it isn't actually in the interests of capitalists to fulfill demand in the long term. In fact, if capitalists continually focused on supplying specifically to fulfill demand, they'd eventually go out of business. Hence, degrowth.
That's so perfect, and that sets up like this end screen, which really pulls it all together here. I mean, this explains exactly what degrowth, what the purpose of degrowth is, and that why it's like this Luddite kind of thing, and that we actually know the falling rate of profit is actually good because we're moving we're moving towards more and more abundance, right? Which is causing the market to crash. Our job then, once the rate of profit has fallen, is to then seize the means of production and shift our economic mode abolish, you could say, or aufhebung the mode, lift it up to a higher mode of production, to remove the contradiction which you were talking about earlier, which is production done socially versus ownership done privately. So what degrowthers want to do is protect that falling rate of profit. They don't realize it, though.
That's ultimately the point of it. Like it's literally to protect that contradiction of capitalism amidst the falling rate of profit. The falling rate of profit is actually evidence that we are creating the conditions necessary for socialism. Like you want, in order, the problem of the falling rate of profit is not that things become less valuable. The problem of the falling rate of profit is that ownership is concentrated amongst a small amount of people. Like if everything was worth nothing, there would be no point in distributing things in the way that they do. Like you would own what you make, you would be able to make creative decisions, you would have the resources to do so, you would exist in a mode that's essentially not even possible to understand by our current set of interests and limitations, in terms of, not limitations in terms of ecological ones, but in terms of individual ones, like what you are limited, what you are allowed to do, both due to a ruling class's law as well as what you have access to as a human being. You want, like, Caleb has this awesome, people like to say that he's defending billionaires, but it's not really defending billionaires. It's defending the idea of having wealth.
Of wealth, yeah.
Which is what we want.
Right.
But he talks about the fact that in the Middle Ages, a mirror was an incredibly valuable object.
Yeah.
And only royalty had it. They had a mirror. And what you're basically saying when you say wealth is bad and abundance in that manner is bad, is that like, just those people shouldn't have mirrors. Not everybody should have mirrors. But everybody should have mirrors. And everybody does now, because we've moved to a point where a mirror is no longer valuable because it is, because of technology and technique,
everyone lives like a king with a mirror.
Yeah, well, I mean, in that respect, at very least. But like, it's so cheap to make a mirror, everyone can have a mirror. That is actually good. It's just that the class divide exists and that contradiction exists, making a dialectical struggle between the two classes.
Right. Abundance basically makes what the capitalists own almost worthless, but it's good for us because it's so abundant we can all have one, right?
Yep. I gotta let the cat out.
Kitty's talking to you, huh?
Come on. Hey, out. Go on. If you're gonna bug me to go out, you gotta go out.
What was I gonna show next?
All right. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So we have so much to cover. What did I want to cover next? So we did that. Changing ownership, Peter's clip. So I was going to go into, unless you want to talk about this more, about sort of the Marxist economic position of all this stuff. I was gonna
the falling rate of profit and stuff, or
yeah, if you want to talk about that some more. Otherwise, I was going to start to go into the difference between Malthusian and neo-Malthusian.
I think let's move on. I think I've explained it well enough.
But
I guess to sum it all up, the real problem is not. I'll bring up that employment or that wages versus productivity graph to like quickly sum it up one more time. That wages versus productivity graph that liberals love to say, look at how bad capitalism, look at how greedy people are, is. They they tell us that it's a bad thing that productivity goes up and wages stagnate.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, while this is bad for individual workers who can't afford to live, the problem is not that the value or that the wages are stagnating. The problem is that class prevents ownership of the product of people's labor from being distributed fairly.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not that like productivity goes up not because workers become superhuman. If anything, like with the obesity epidemic, you could make an argument against that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just kind of a joke. It's not really relevant. The productivity goes up because technology and technique improve.
Right.
It's not because workers become genetically better at work. Like, that's stupid. That's absolutely silly. And what we should want is for the value of that labor to be diminished completely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the ultimate
Right.
goal. It's
Right.
just if you resolve the class contradiction in which ownership is no longer a contradictory prospect, then the fact that wage, the hourly compensation nosedives is not bad.
Right.
That's the problem of capitalism,
Mm-hmm.
not that people are greedy by nature, which is everybody's argument for and against capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
It's just flat out completely missing the point of moving to a higher economic mode that resolves the contradiction that capitalism is essentially defined by. So that would be, yeah, that's about all I would say on that. You, I think, know more on the difference between Malthusianism and neo-Malthusianism than I do.
Yeah. Where are we going with this? I don't have a good segue for what I wanted to. I don't have an.
I tried to throw it to you the best I could. I know that wasn't that great.
No, that's all right. Well, let's see. I had well, where was I going with this? So we talked about the neo-Malthusian. Okay, so the Malthusian versus neo-Malthusian. So that's like a big thing that these guys have to come to terms with, right? Is that the degrowth movement is a neo-Malthusian. It's not, and the neo-Malthusian movement approaches overpopulation from a different perspective. It's all about consumption. Oh, you know what I should do? Actually, I'm gonna bring up Chris Morlock used your book to counter this person's argument.
I didn't see that yet. That's great.
Let me see. I think I retweeted.
Morlock rules. I love Chris Morlock. He's spitting fire constantly.
Chris Morlock is the man. All right, let me put it up on the screen here. So, I like too that this person just got no likes on this too. Like, they got the waterfall of likes, but now they're getting nothing. So what does Chris say? He says, degrowth people have actually never read Malthus. His entire theory...
Which is exactly what I fucking said about this same idiot in his thread.
His entire theory was that overpopulation was imminent, not actually present in his time, and that that problem was in relationship between human population production. This is the primary idea of Foster, Hickel, Saito. This person says, I actually have read it. And he actually did make a connection between poverty, vice, misery, and what the population levels at the time would allow in terms of resource distribution, as well as stating population growth over time would make matters worse. He says, but you have failed to make the connection between Malthus and the insidious reading of metabolic rifts from Marx that is twisted into degrowth's main sleight of hand, starting with Foster. Read Coffin's book. He nails the concept pretty well right here.
That's one of my favorite lines in the book, too. Overconsumption is when usage of resources exceeds the sustainable pace and capacity of the ecosystem. overpopulation is when the usage of resources exceeds the sustainable pace and capacity of the ecosystem because there are too many people.
Yeah. Right.
It's
right.
the same thing.
It's the same argument. They're just not saying the quiet part loud.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. They're just not saying the quiet part loud. They realize that they need to say the quiet part quietly.
Right. This is the foundation of understanding. This is so simply put. And this is really what my consumerism video is all about, is getting to the root of what this consumerism ideology is all about, this idea that we're consuming too much, because it's a way of sort of shifting the argument away from the vulgar Malthusianism to a more of a neo-Malthusianism, which still implies a limit to what human potential actually is, right? And Malthus was wrong about that, and now the neo-Malthusians are also wrong. They've made the argument more sophisticated, but they are still wrong. It's still premised on this idea that humans are a virus on the planet.
With Malthus, it was all about food production. And with neo-Malthusians, it's all about energy production.
Yes.
Because they realized that energy production is so much more obfuscated and obscured. It's abstracted so far away from what a human actually understands. Like you mentioned, we were talking earlier, I think you said, no, you were talking to Brian, I think, on Twitter, where you were saying, you said, this is a quote of yours, I'm not an expert, and I think I probably know more about the grid than the vast majority of people.
Yeah.
And that's true, because the vast majority of people don't understand energy production from point of generation to point of use.
Right.
It's just, it's such a complex, and there's tons of steps in between these things. There's lots of different types of generation of energy. There's lots of different types of grid. There's consistent, there's intermittent. There's just so much at play at any given time. And a person is not taught any of it at any point in their education. They have to seek it out. And again, it's even complicated. Like you and I have some understanding of this because we paid a very close attention to degrowth and these issues. And it's kind of an adjacent issue. So we have some understanding of it, but like even in that, like we are lay people.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And this does all tie together with the energy sector, which I'll show how this all ties together. But so you guys remember from the early part of this stream where I talked about my personal connection to degrowth and how I live in a town called Kingston, New York, where Peter Buffett is the other Peter, the philanthropist son of Warren Buffett, who is taking daddy's money, and what he likes to say is he's putting money out of its misery. He's creating a degrowth utopia here in Kingston, New York. He's using his tentacles to put money out of its putting its tentacles. He is using. I mean, so he's funding, like he's financially connected to Jason Hickel. He's financially connected to Timothy Parike. He is undergirding the degrowth movement, right? Now, Peter Buffett is an outspoken Malthusian, just like his father.
Absolutely.
Just like his father. His father is, you can research this on your own. Warren Buffett, overpopulation. It's very
Warren Buffett Good Club. That's all you have to search. Even if you want to skip the Good Club because some people think it's tabloid stuff, there's plenty of documented information on Warren Buffett being concerned with overpopulation and funding population control methods in the third world. But what's fun, I think, is you can go to Peter Buffett's Twitter profile. I can't anymore on my personal account because he's banned me. He's blocked me. But if you look... we blocked you. Peter Buffett, his most recent reply
this he quit Twitter after this, was to me where I was citing an article that he was promoting, where he says, you know, two great minds. These two guys just wrote a book. I did my whole stream last time was about this guy's book. These two guys who wrote this book about very cavalier about overpopulation. I love to bring this up because these guys say it out loud. They're just outright total Malthusians and degrowthers. They believe in both. So back to the hard question: is the current 8 billion people at the current level of aggregate consumption, not, you know, this is the consumption argument. Is aggregate consumption sustainable? Is an even larger population continuing to consume at current levels sustainable? Given the rapidly declining health from the human point of view of virtually every ecosystem on Earth, I do not believe either of those possibilities is plausible. That means we need to act today to make a future with fewer people and less. Fewer people consuming less.
Did I send you the AI I had generate this quote from a documentary?
No.
Oh, I'm going to send it to you afterwards. I got an AI that I was able to select excited as the expression.
Oh, God.
And oh, my God, it's so fucking funny.
How many fewer people? How much less? Again,
that's how it says it. How many fewer? How many less?
Again, no one knows or can know for certain, but as we make choices today, we have to make our best guess. For the purposes of starting an honest conversations about public policy, I assume the answer is no more than half the current population consuming no more than half the resources used today. That likely won't be enough, but it's a start. I mean,
well, and see, the thing here is he was willing to commit half to text, having the human population. But in that crazy interview on that Nobody channel, like he's like, we need 1 to 2 billion people left over
Tops.
when I'm done.
Yeah, right. I know. Maybe he's softened his view a little bit since then.
Maybe, but I think it's because he had to commit this to text, and he knew that more people would see it. And I think that, like, that collapse fetishist channel, I think he knew nobody was going to see that.
Yeah. What an insane thing. What a fucking insane thing to say. And Peter Buffett's like, these are my guys.
Yeah. Peter Buffett's like, these two great minds.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, well, we know what you want.
And you could say, oh, the guilt by association. Well, just because he's a Malthusian and just because he supports degrowth doesn't mean it's the same thing. He's just a bad guy, and we need to take degrowth back from the Malthusians, right? Is that what they would argue?
He's funding it.
He's funding it. He loves it.
Like, even if Jason Hickel is entirely genuine, he sees that as a means to advance his agenda. So who gives a shit? Like, I don't think that Jason Hickel is genuine in any. I think he's cynical.
I agree.
Reading what I've read of his, like, he interprets limits to growth in a way that you have to literally come up with. But making the assumption he's just a huge idiot, he's a huge idiot that's doing what Peter Buffett is willing to pay for.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so this is the Malthusian argument, and this is the degrowth argument. We have Malthusian population outpacing food, right? So it was just food versus population. Those were the only metrics. He proved to be a total dingus. He was wrong. He was debunked. Malthus failed. You can't, so they had to reboot Malthus, and they rebooted him, and they added more lines. And
Which is exactly what they do with all reboots. They just make it more complicated and assume that people will think that means it's better.
Yeah. See how many more lines we added? This must be more correct. And even this chart on the right-hand side, the limits to growth, which was commissioned by...
That's been debunked too.
It's been debunked too. It's been proven wrong too. This was made in 1972. but this is the foundation of the degrowth movement. It all came out of this. It
Even
was
Hickel posits that it is more or less like the origin of the degrowth movement.
They talk about it.
Criticizes limits.
Yeah,
but not in the way that he should.
Yeah, no, they
not for the right reasons, mind you.
You've read his book. I've skimmed it.
I've read it more than once. I've read it more than once. That's all I'm going to say.
This is the foundation of the degrowth movement. Is more lines on the Malthusian chart, which have been debunked. So they'll probably reboot it again soon. Who knows? They'll come up with some more charts.
It was debunked in that, he predicted specific numbers and specific they, the group of fun guys having a great time on computers at MIT, totally not funded by anybody, not the Club of Rome or anything. Those guys predicted specific numbers and specific years that we would run out of
like oil,
reserves.
Peak oil.
Like oil.
Yeah,
peak oil, gold, several other precious metals, some minerals, etc. And all of them were before 1990.
Right.
And we have, at this point, right now, not just past 1990, but we have consistently grown our reserves of all of those things, like in some cases, well over double.
Yeah.
5 times. I think gold, we have 5 times as much of it now, if I remember right. That might not be correct, but it's not just debunked. It just didn't happen at all how they said. Like, they did debunk it. Julian Simon and there was another author who wrote an article that was published in Forbes called Mr. Doomsday. They both said, like, no, this isn't going to happen. And Simon bet against Paul Ehrlich about limits coming true or not, and he won $534 from Paul Ehrlich. But like ultimately, it's not just debunked. It's been physically incorrect. Like the predictions it made were all incorrect, every single one of them.
Yeah,
and they
like
have been wrong since 1990.
Doomsday forecasting is not even something that is like, just from our era or just from Malthus's era. It's just something that's happened throughout human history as a way to sort of say, oh, the end is nigh. The end is nigh. You must.
The end is nigh. We need to tax the rich. Like that's all we need to do. Just tax the rich. Don't talk about ownership.
Yeah.
And then, like, when they tax the rich, there's all these loopholes, and then the rich don't have to pay the taxes. See Warren Buffett.
It's just buying more time to prevent the inevitable transition from a society, an economic mode where the abundance is created, has made it so that a ruling class is superfluous, right? Yep. Fully automated, abundant, luxury, space communism. Like Olympia said, we want a Star Trek future, not a Mad Max future. But here's my Socratic question to the degrowthers who say this is not about population control. It's not Malthusian. It's just about reducing our consumption. That's all we care about. And my Socratic question to the degrowthers out there, maybe I'll post this on Twitter, see if I get any replies. But
do it as a poll.
Yeah. Well, then I'd have to provide answers. I guess I could just do yes
and no.
Yeah. If the population were smaller, would you still advocate for degrowth? Or is degrowth only a thing that has to happen because there's too many of us, right? This is the underlying logic of degrowth, is that these people believe that, so if we did what Wes Jackson and Bob Jensen want to do and reduce the population down to 1 or 2 million people, would we still have to do degrowth?
Good question.
Or could we all live abundantly and just consume as much as we wanted? If there were only 1,000 of us, if there were only 10,000 of us, would it matter how much we consumed? Or is that dependent on the size of the population?
We should ask the utilitarians. I think they can tell us the answer.
Well, they'll say, "Oh, well, according to the repugnant conclusion." Well, because I think that's all
Let's
baked in.
watch The Good Place and then answer this question, okay?
Oh God, no. So yeah, that's my question to the degrowthers. If there's anyone hate watching, I would love to hear your answer to this question. If the population were smaller, would you still advocate degrowth? Or is degrowth only necessary because our population's too big?
Well,
Because
my natural inclination is to just go right back to energy production. If you want to reduce energy production by half, if you look at a graph of energy production next to population, they're nearly the same. Why is that? Because energy production enables large numbers of people to live that couldn't have lived prior to the modes of energy production we've developed.
Right.
So if you just took that away, what would happen? Like, that's the question, like, you can answer here. Like, well, a bunch of people would die.
Right.
It's that simple. Like, you would,
Yes.
and not just people in the first world where energy production is way out of hand. A bunch of people would die worldwide because energy production exists in third world countries and they do depend on it. Like, and on top of that, as much as it's not done in a fair way, they also depend on energy production in the first world countries because we've created dependencies where they're stuck on our shit. So ultimately, you would have an effect where a lot of things collapse that people depend on. And if you did that, lots of people would die. So if you want to bring down energy production, you want to bring down population.
Yeah.
Period. And if you don't know that, you just haven't thought about it.
Yeah. It's Malthusianism with extra steps.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because both ideologies are based on the same principle, the same sort of principle that the universe is dying a slow entropic heat death, right? And that we have to slow down and that there are limits and that we're going to just collapse in like a dying star. This is sort of the foundation of both the degrowth movement, Malthusianism, overpopulation. All these concepts are tied to this idea of entropic pessimism, that the earth is just going to collapse and die. If we want to do some Wikipedia research, right? I linked to some Wikipedia articles. I wouldn't even recommend reading Wikipedia to do most of your research, but it's so well known, it's so out there that even Wikipedia will tell you these simple connections, which are that if you go on the degrowth Wikipedia page, we can see the degrowth movement recognizes Romanian American mathematician, statistician, economist Nicholas Georges Q. Rogen as the main intellectual figure inspiring the movement.
It's Georges, like it's a tiny E at the end. It's like the Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil.
Georges Q.
I think that Resident Evil Village is like in like a Romanian analog, if I'm not mistaken.
If his work, in his work, The Entropy Law of an Economic Process, he argues that the economic scarcity, hear that? Scarcity, that's keyword scarcity, is rooted in physical reality and that all natural resources are irreversibly degraded when put into use in the economic activity that are carrying capacity. Carrying capacity, again, is...
That fucking term.
Carrying capacity, well, it doesn't say it on this chart, but carrying capacity is, that is literally what the Malthusian chart is about carrying capacity.
Well, whether you're saying carrying capacity or talking about consumption, you're saying the same thing. Like, because you're claiming that we can't be using resources at the rate that we are.
Right. So that is Earth's capacity to sustain human populations and consumption levels is bound to decrease sometime in the future as Earth's finite stock of mineral resources is presently being extracted and put to use, and consequently that the world economy as a whole is heading towards inevitable future collapse. So
it's all bad.
Where was I?
It's doomer shit. It's doomer shit.
I forget what I was going to. Limits to growth. I mean, I'm not going to read the whole Wikipedia page.
Well, I mean, ultimately, I think what you were saying is that, guys, I don't have. I'll bring my mic closer to me for people. It's a good mic. I just turned it up and kept it away from myself. I think what you were saying was that these things are well known enough about the degrowth movement that even the Wikipedia page acknowledges it.
I forget where I was going with this.
Give me a second. I'll be right back. I've got a child yelling.
This will get us back to, was this where I was going with this? Right. So entropy, there it is. Entropy pessimism. This is what I was just talking about. It was entropy pessimism. So this has to do with this guy's, who is part of the degrowth movement, or a founding intellectual of the degrowth movement, view on the economy, entropy pessimism. So entropy pessimism is what I was just talking about heat death of the universe. And entropy pessimism is a widespread view of the degrowth movement. So, I mean, this is all based off of the same idea of there being limited resources, that human beings are outgrowing their capacity, their carrying capacity on the earth. Mankind will ultimately face extinction. These are the founding ideologies of both overpopulation and Malthusianism, degrowth. It's all based on this entropy law. So there really isn't a difference between, you could say, well, degrowth has nothing to do with population, but it absolutely makes the same assumptions. And we actually, it's very hard to find, like I was sort of alluding to this earlier in the stream, but and talking about movies like Koyaanisqatsi or the Mike Judge movie, Idiocracy. It's very hard to find. All of our media, all of our narratives are based on this entropic, pessimistic idea that the Earth the universe started with a big bang, and eventually it's all gonna die out, right? It's all gonna collapse. There's limited resources, there's limited possibilities, but that doesn't have to be the case. Like Lumpia said, and I'm not even familiar with Star Trek too closely, but I think the idea behind Star Trek is that human beings have sort of ascended, right? They've ascended to space travel, and we've created a realm of abundance, and that we don't actually have to say, you know what, we have to put hard limits on what we as a species can do and the way we can operate in this universe. So that's, I mean, sure, you could say that in the degrowth movement, they don't say, oh, overpopulation is the main problem, but it's all founded on this same idea. So maybe I should.
Sorry about that. They needed to go to bed.
Then no problem. I was actually going to be like, oh, should I wait for Peter to talk about this next part? So what the next part of this I want to talk about is
100% recyclable bottle.
Well, there you go. There
Recycled.
You go. But what about
doing my part?
But what about your carbon footprint? Is it carbon neutral?
It's better now. I don't give a shit. I It says that it's better, so it's better. That's what this is, right?
That's how it works. It's not all just branding and marketing and packaging to make.
I literally, that's Jason Hickel's book. They say that it's better, so it's better. That's it.
Well, there you go.
Buy my book. Less sucks.
Get Peter's book. Watch the new documentary when it comes out.
Soon. It should be within a couple weeks. I have to coordinate with Caleb and you on a stream to do before it and figure all that shit out.
So I think
should
that.
Be done tonight, though.
So I think that I've hammered home. I hope I've hammered home enough the point that Malthusian and neo-Malthusianism, which is where degrowth stems from, are all based off of the same inherent principle of a universe of scarcity and limits. So that's the ideology. What I kind of want to shift to next is talking about how degrowth plays out in real life, right? We get all these like little Twitter guys or like Twitter anarchists who say degrowth is this perfect world where all the puppies are happy and I ride my bike to the farmer's market and we center indigenous ways of living and
we have our community garden.
And I ride my bike and I don't have to drive my car and my solar panels and we all live like Ted Kaczynski.
Everyone has a large battery on their property, which isn't bizarre sounding.
Ad voice, degrowth is what the empire craves.
Degrowth, it's what the empire craves.
See, Peter's got a really good radio voice. That was good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. So this is why Peter and I have the anti-bike, the bike thing in our profile. So bikes are like a huge part of the degrowth movement. Degrowthers love bikes. So I made this thread a while back talking about how degrowth is the justifying ideology of World War III, which you could say has started already, or they're trying to start. It's the unipolar world order coming to a head and trying to fight Russia and China, who are taking the lead and guiding the rest of the world into this new world order, which we support, right? We support the multipolar world.
Well, it's one that's not hostile towards nuclear. In fact, it embraces it.
Yeah. And it's the best thing for American people. People say, fuck America, but it's fuck the American government, our corrupt American government that wants to head us into World War III and maintain the ruling order. But for the American people, the American people, cooperating with Russia and China, which is what those countries want to do. They want the American people to cooperate to help build up the rest of the world, right? To grow the economies of these places that have been artificially held back, right?
Often by us.
So degrowth,
not us, but our state.
The degrowth narratives have been working hand in hand with the narratives to maintain this World War III narrative, right? To fight Putin. So there's the war in Ukraine is a fossil fuel war. This is again about energy, right? Claims an ad campaign, My Sanctions, which encourage Europeans to perform micro actions to fight Putin.
Oh my God.
I know. You've heard of micro transactions? Now you get micro transactions.
Microaggressions, and now it's microactions.
Well, small is beautiful, Peter, so.
It is. That's true. That's true.
The ultimate goal of the campaign is to reduce energy. Wow, reduce energy. Sounds like degrowth. Sounds like these, coincidentally, if we ask what is degrowth, the answer is a planned reduction of energy. Perhaps the most...
New York Times.
Perhaps the most prominent.
I've never even seen that. That's great. It's also about less is more, how degrowth will save the world.
Yeah, so this I highlighted. Initiative aims to reduce energy. And then we scroll down and we say Jason Hickel in the New York Times saying, perhaps the most prominent proponent of the degrowth movement, Jason Hickel, an economist, anthropologist, and author of Less is More, How Degrowth Will Save the World. Degrowth, as he defines it, is a planned reduction of energy and resource use designed to bring the economy back into balance with the living world, yada, yada, yada. So we can see over the years, we look at propaganda from war times past. It's the same thing.
I thought that said eat ass.
Do with less, so they'll have to eat ass.
I had just taken a drink of. I had to be very careful there.
Rationing gives you your fair share. Save the wheat, help the fleet. Eat less bread. Less is more, baby. Less is more.
Eat ass.
And now you can impose your personal sanctions against Putin by eating less, consuming less, turning your heat down in the wintertime. I think
ethical consumption used to be about saving animals, and now it's about punishing Vladimir Putin.
Well, it's all one in the. It's all one and the same. It's all one and the same.
Yes, true. Well, for every animal saved, Vladimir Putin, who hates animals, is very upset. Very upset.
Choose bike over car to stop fueling Putin's war machine. Fight Putin, ride a bike.
I love how there's no like choose bike over car. They don't care about grammar or like
choose bike over car.
Car bad.
Car bad. Oh man.
That's these are I haven't seen these. I did not see this thread when you posted it. This is
wow. It's good. You know, I'm gonna pull up. Can I pull up this video? And
It's loud.
Oh, it's really loud. Sorry. Hold on. Let me
Wojna w Europie
copy address. I want to put this full screen. I wonder if I can do that.
It is loud.
That was really
That's
loud.
True.
Hold on. Download video from Twitter. Oops.
Twitter download video. I do this all the time too.
Because I don't even want to download. I just want to see it in full screen.
Well, yeah, because Twitter is the worst.
It's gonna be really loud.
Video.
Let me catch it before it gets like super fucking loud. It's gonna blast us.
I turn the stream's audio on every time you play a video, so I'm just gonna wait until it's officially going.
Now it's not gonna go.
Of course.
No.
Good stuff. I love this video.
Wait, here we go. You just turn it down a little bit here. Zoom in.
You just had to view it in the worst possible resolution. That's all.
It probably would have just taken a minute to load the other one. I should have done it ahead of time. I meant to. I do so much. I don't think people realize I do so much preparation for these streams. I work very hard for you guys. Work very hard.
I work so hard. You should see the work.
So hard. So very hard.
I'm working so hard at all hours.
Pamięta pan ten moment, wszyscy pamiętamy koniec lutego, kiedy przyszła wojna. O co chodzi? Wojna w Europie, strajk pancerni. I wtedy okazało się, że państwa, politycy nie są w stanie sobie za bardzo poradzić z tą sytuacją, nie są w stanie wpłynąć na reżim Putina.
We get to fight both climate
We can
and
do both.
they
we can do both.
It's this they say it's the same thing. We're fighting climate change and Putin. That's it. That's what they're equating it, right? It's the same thing.
We've got to fight Vladimir Putin.
To weaken Russia, just turn your heat down. That's how it works.
To wszystko
Fuck
składa się z małych
bikes.
kroków, z małych zmian z codziennych przyzwyczajeń.
Before Russian troops withdrew from the outskirts of Kiev, we shared online a set of campaign assets designed for easy adaptation. They redirect to a web page with tips on how to harm Putin.
Let's see what some of these are. I will reduce amount of water in kettle to necessary.
Okay.
I will not iron my clothes. I will choose train instead of plane. Why? All this like broken. I will choose train instead of plane.
I will use train instead of plane.
I mean, this sounds a lot like degrowth. Sounds a lot like degrowth to me.
They're degrowing their vocabulary.
They're using less words. So
Yes, less is more.
less HTML and text that has to travel through the internet.
Sorry, it's not less is more. It's just less more.
Less more. Me good.
Degrowth world.
Me monkey. Return the monkey. We must return the monkey.
Less more. How degrowth save world?
My Sanctions is a
My
grassroots
favorite
ongoing
book.
initiative. Therefore, we don't know how many people took action. What we do know is that the films were downloaded, translated and broadcast in Lithuanian, Latvian, Estonian, German, English, Georgian, Moldavian, Ukrainian and Russian. We know that in Poland and in the Baltic states, we've reached over 10 million people. Unfortunately, we also know that although the action continues, it won't stop Russia. At least, despite Putin, we'll be more eco-friendly.
Oh man.
I think I saw the ghost of Kiev there.
Yeah, I like how they have like an AR thing where you can like pretend that your like village is burning down. Just pretend you're fighting Putin. Save the planet.
Yeah.
That's it.
You'll never believe how much we've managed to save in terms of.
Like, it's the same thing. Like, you're either saving the animals or you're fighting Putin.
I heated my cup of coffee only to a lukewarm temperature today, and that's how I got Putin.
Oh my god, Peter, were you contracted to do the voice for this?
Yeah, I was.
That's how you know so much about degrowth. You've worked directly with it.
I bought myself a plastic coffee cup, which I take to Starbucks and they fill up for me. I do not use their cardboard coffee cups because I know that is satanic.
Oh man. Well, there you have it.
And Putin hates me for it.
Holy shit, you're good at that.
I love the idea that like your individual actions are upsetting Putin.
I know. Like, Putin's like,
it's it's the same argument as like your consumption has some effect on the climate.
Yeah.
And, like, you can save the world by, eating impossible Whoppers, I guess.
Yeah, right.
But like,
I know it's funny how all
I
this
had
stuff.
an impossible Whopper, and Putin was pissed.
How all this stuff
so
is
angry.
It's based off of consumerism, right? Criticizing consumerism, but they're like, but to fight it, we need to do more consumerism.
yeah. Yeah.
We're consuming too much. The alternative is to consume the same amount, but in a way that Putin won't like.
Putin wants us to grow our energy consumption.
Oh, no. Not on my watch.
So that's my segue into this next clip from your documentary that I think is a good to talk about energy and these characters who have keep popping up in the degrowth movement, and what this all comes down to, right? So, do you want to should I just play the clip, or do you want to say
I think this
else?
one requires less introduction than the other.
Okay, so I'll just play it.
Energy companies are ultimately finance capital. According to Lenin, finance capital is monopoly industrial capital merged with bank capital, which actually doesn't require a single Jew to be involved at all, as some idiot is probably going to assert in either the comments or response video. Roughly 80% of U.S. energy is generated by investor-owned utilities. With some scrutiny, we can see why energy companies are pushing windmills and solar panels.
There he is.
We can see why they fund nonprofits that push these types of energy paradigms, and why they're happy to have degrowth influencers peddling a theory of radical abundance. So, why? Well, finance capital wins no matter what plays out. If demand-focused rhetoric succeeds in keeping the working class attempting to adjust its demand in service of maintaining a ruling class's supremacy, as Marx pointed out Malthus's lampoon was intended to do, then it can't or won't organize some kind of power to leverage against the energy production sector or the capitalist ruling class itself. Instead, energy companies get to operate intermittent renewables that they own, providing the image of a green future with a natural gas baseload that they also own. Or, if idealist, true believer degrowth environmentalists and their politicians were to actually achieve green austerity and it starves or freezes enough people to actually degrow energy demand, then we have to remember what I just said a second ago, that these massive companies own the quote-unquote green infrastructure. They will have cornered a growing market, ironically enough.
There you have it. There you have it. It all ties together. There's Daddy Buffett. And isn't that weird that Daddy Buffett is promoting all these guys who are promoting the ideology of degrowth? And
I mean,
yeah,
it's super convenient that like they've made the guilt by association thing something you can criticize somebody for talking about, because at this level it is guilt by association. Like, you actually are servicing the agenda of a guy who wins either way, as long as a certain condition is met. Here, either moving to 100% renewables as an excuse to shut down nuclear so that you have to provide a natural gas baseload, or if you actually do switch to 100% renewables, he's got it. He's
playing both sides, so he can't lose.
Yeah, he'll always come out on top because he's playing both sides, so he always comes out on top.
That's right.
That's what happens here. Like, it doesn't matter if Jason Hickel is genuine or cynical or omitting things on purpose or by accident. Ultimately, there's money coming from Warren Buffett to Peter Buffett to organizations to Jason Hickel. And the things that Jason Hickel is saying directly service the agenda of Warren Buffett, the guy at the very top.
Yeah.
And people don't love the idea of just connecting the dots by where the funding comes from, but it's what you have to do. Like, that's what economic analysis is. Like, why does this thing happen when this money is transferred to this place? Like,
right.
What are the social relationships between these various actors and forces? Like, it's different when you say, like, well, the reptilians are funding putting fluoride in the water to make the frogs gay. That's different than saying everything that Jason Hickel says here services the agenda, whether it's cynical or whether it's genuine. Those are different things. Like, we've spent, and then the other thing is, it's anti-Semitic to talk about finance capital. But is Warren Buffett Jewish? No, absolutely not.
No.
He is anything but Jewish. as not Jewish as they come.
Yeah.
And that's the thing here. It sounds like it's not about X thing or Y thing. But it is. It's about these things because it's a means of making the end game, it either obfuscate it entirely or make it sound like a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have to even really care one way or the other, as long as you're not taking away from Warren Buffett's ability to materially do these things. Like, you could be against degrowth, you can be for degrowth, you can be whatever. You're arguing about it on social media. That's the goal. That's what they really want. And that's the whole reason why it's important to point out these material things over like what Jason Hickel says degrowth is.
Right, because they all online, they'll say, well, degrowth is when we have this, this, and this, and this, and Warren Buffett is not doing it the right way. And Timothy Parike can say, oh, show me billionaires who actually like degrowth. And then when you do, they say, well, this isn't real degrowth. Real degrowth is the idea that I have in my head of the fantasy that I've created, the Chobani yogurt ad, where everyone lives in this idyllic post-capitalist utopia where everyone grows their own food and is happy and windmills are blowing in the distance. And it's totally separated from the reality of what's happening, which is that these renewables are undermining the stability of our grid. They are actually, you can look this up, they are making our electricity bills go up. They are making it easier for the grid to collapse because it's more fragile, because you have all this intermittent sources where you can't control the weather, right? That's the mind fuck of all this, where these guys want to, the conceit of the climate change argument is that we're trying to control the weather, right? Well, you can't fucking control the weather. We're trying to control our society in order to control the weather. No, we should be protecting our society from the weather, but we're making ourselves more susceptible to the weather by building out all this weather-dependent infrastructure that keeps people's CPAP machines pumping, life-saving energy that keeps populations alive.
Well, it's even funny in that Chobani ad, there's a point in that where she turns on some rain for her crops. They're literally that's literally, it's not just that they're ideologically, that's a logical conclusion. That's a thing that they've used to promote these ideas. Chobani has used to promote these ideas to promote themselves. But there was something I was going to say and I don't remember what it was. Oh yeah. In the chat, I don't know if amitriptyline is still in the chat, but earlier in the day we were talking about degrowth on my Discord server, and amitriptyline made a very good point, which was it's very similar to land back in some respects.
Yeah.
These are, you can do land back to force out hydroelectric, which is a renewable that's actually useful. Because the thing about hydroelectric is it generates enough energy. It's also usually consistent too. But if you use land back and you push the hydroelectric out of the area and make it so that you've got to do wind and solar if you're going to do renewable, you end up bringing energy production down, which again, de facto puts natural gas as your base load if there's going to be a base load. If there's not going to be a base load, you're just going to kill people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Warren Buffett's a perfect example of being on both sides.
Indian Point thing is. Yeah, exactly. And that's what Indian Point was too. Indian Point was using all of this ideology to paint the nuclear plant as bad, even though statistically speaking, the nuclear plant does all of the things that they claim they want, except it doesn't reduce energy. That's how you can really see what this is about. Because zero emissions. Apparently, emissions are the worst thing in the world. So we eliminate that with nuclear, and we generate more energy.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's not the emissions part of it, because they don't give a shit about the emissions.
Yeah.
Like, once the natural gas comes in and takes over for Indian Point, are the people complaining about, like, there are probably some people who are genuinely thinking like, oh, nuclear is the worst thing in the world. Oh, it's natural gas now. That's the worst thing. Like, there's some people like that, but like all of the influencers, they've moved the fuck on, I imagine. I can't imagine those people still dwelling on this exact same sector in terms of energy generation. Like, once you get rid of the nuclear, that was the whole thing.
Well, we still have a few nuclear plants left in New York, and that is really the big debate.
Yeah, they move on to those, right?
Right. That's the big debate. Now there's a law that actually we've set these goals. It's like our own Paris Accord. It's a New York version of it, where we say, oh, well, we have to get to 100% renewable or 70% renewables by 2040, and then 100% zero emissions. Like, they switch it from renewables to emissions. Basically, as you can see, they're sort of laying it out that they want to crowd out the ability for nuclear to stay economically viable using renewable energy. Mm-hmm. But I think more people are waking up to the fact that you can't. I mean, this really is a death sentence to, like, say that we can do our grids as all this renewable energy. You just can't do it. And hydro is
Indian Point closed down, and that has affected like energy bills horrifically in the area. And that is, like, in terms of like who you're affecting, it's people who make less money. Duh.
Yeah. No, I know. It made emissions go up. Like, if emissions are like your thing and you want to eliminate fossil fuel usage and emissions, well, when they shut it down, they created more fossil fuel emissions and usage. So they're doing the exact opposite. So we have to, like, take a look at, like, if these people aren't if you're an environmentalist and you're not pro-nuclear, you are a Malthusian. That's literally all there is to it, because that's the only way that we can transition away from fossil fuels. If that's your problem, I personally don't think that fossil fuels are that as bad as they're made out to be. They actually help a lot of people. They're
just a lower, like, in terms of what I think, they're just a lower form of energy production. We want to move to a higher form of it, which is nuclear, which also happens to not create any air pollution whatsoever.
Right.
It only creates a small amount of nuclear waste, which gradually technology improves. It's recycled more and more, so less of the waste is even technically waste every year on. So that technology is even retrofit in older reactors. It's not that you have to build new reactors to use that technology either. Mm-hmm. But the problem with it, again, is that they want to reduce energy production, period.
Yeah.
It's not that they want clean energy.
They have to create scarcity, artificial scarcity.
If they wanted to create energy, or wanted to move to clean energy, nuclear is by far the correct. It's not even close. Like, in terms of death toll,
footprint,
it's so much lower than any other, including solar.
It takes up less space. It's safer. Mm-hmm. It's cheaper.
The amount of waste. People love to say, but what about the nuclear waste? Yeah. It's all horrible, and it piles up everywhere. Over the last, I think it was since the 1960s. I might be wrong. It might actually be the 50s, but I'm going to go with 60s to be safe. Since the 60s, we've created a football field 10 meters deep worth of it.
Yeah.
Worldwide. It's nothing. Like, and that's before we were recycling it. Now we're recycling. We're running the fuel through, and then we've also got another type of reactor, which is the one that uses thorium and creates more fuel. I can't remember what it's called.
The breeder reactor? Is that what
the breeder reactor. Yeah. Like they use thorium and actually create more nuclear material that is usable.
Yeah.
Like, it's
it's absurd the difference between.
Yeah.
And then that energy is also much less expensive to create because it's constant. It requires less labor. You turn it on and you leave it on. You don't. The maintenance is, yes, it's difficult, but it's not as difficult as constant maintenance of mechanical parts on a windmill, or the fact that you're basically taking up that chart you showed me of the amount that you have to have for solar or wind to match a single nuclear plant.
Yeah.
It's near the size of Ohio.
Yeah.
Like it's fucking insane. Like how unnecessary that is. Like that's a ton of construction, a ton of maintenance, and it spans a huge amount of area just to like have power part of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a bigger scandal than it is how much nuclear has been propagandized over the last 50 years. But the more you learn about this stuff, the more you see how it goes hand in hand with the degrowth movement, right? This is what degrowth justifies shutting down nuclear plants, because you say, no, even if there was a good the perfect energy source like nuclear is, that's not good. We need to degrow. We need to reduce our consumption, and nuclear would make it so we could consume more, and that's not a good thing, right? According to these people, is that we shouldn't be we should be reducing our consumption, and nuclear would make us consume even more. So, and then the other thing that I don't like is the vilification of fossil fuels so much, because developing countries need fossil fuels, right? We shouldn't be like saying, well, let's just stop our fossil fuel usage. Yeah, where we can like in our country where we can replace,
where we could move to higher electricity generation.
Right. And people vilify China for using coal and tons of renewable energy, which they can do. It makes sense for them there because they have access to the rare earth minerals. They have access to the land. And to touch back on the land back argument, this person, Amy Triptolian, is absolutely right that the land back thing is also heavily funded by Warren Buffett via Peter Buffett and the Novo Foundation, because, and you can read in his statements to his investors, is that he says, energy is one of his crown jewels, his crown jewel investment. So the way that you seize lots of land, right, is by, you can do like land back, right? You could say, oh, we're seizing land in the name of whatever tribe or whatever. All you need to do is find a couple of people who are part of some indigenous tribe or whatever, and they can say, we speak for all of the indigenous people who want to do this. Because
Nick Tilson.
Yeah, Nick Tilson. And he has connections to like Obama and everything, but and his parents were part of the American Indian movement. So these people are like embedded in activism, which has slowly merged with the NGO world, which has merged with government insider action, all merging together to sort of uphold this system. And I mean, that's what not all. If the more you follow like energy policy and energy whatever, you see that like the indigenous stuff is used very, very cynically. When you just talk to like random leftists on Twitter, they're like, oh, you're so racist. Oh my, how could you say that? Land back. Blah. But if you start talking to people who are know their way around energy policy and discourse and whatnot, they are totally immune to it, because they see it over and over and over again, how indigenous people are used as this way to sort of manipulate energy resources and access to land and natural resources. And it's the noble savage trope, right? It's this idea that
always.
So degrowth and land back are completely connected. And they both operate to do the same thing. I think somebody even quote tweeted me or Peter and was saying something about like, this ain't it or something, and we need indigenous ways of living and degrowth and blah, blah. And
It's fetishism. It's gross. It's like that's racism. Like,
Yeah.
That's the thing that people don't understand is it's a fetishistic way of viewing Native Americans. Like I don't know. Like I don't currently live in a town, but my hometown was very near a reservation, and my hometown was kind of viewed as, in a way, a sister city to the reservation. The police chief was named Johnny Pokehagen. He was awesome, might I add. He's part of the reason why I can't just like I don't just like immediately hate individual police officers, because he's a really good guy.
I've been friends with a lot of cops over the years.
Yeah, and his indigenous way of life was to be the police chief. And every person I've known from the Indian reservation, every time I've gone to the Indian reservation, and yes, it's called the Indian reservation in those circles, might I add. Like, it's not even like, I know a liberal would be like, "Oh, you're saying it that way." Like, that's how they said it.
Yeah.
Anyway, you would go to that reservation. There was American flags everywhere. On the casinos that the reservation owns, there's American flags. People are like veterans of various wars. Lots of them. A lot of conservatives on the like. It's fetishistic to view indigenous people the way they view them. This like return to nature. They have a way of life. They're the real natural stewards of the earth. That's gross. It's racist as shit.
Well,
and it just erases not a small part of the indigenous population, a large part of the indigenous population. Just erases them, pretends they don't exist, so they can believe that this fetish of like the headdress wearing native who's putting his foot to the ground to hear the fucking horses coming. Like, that is not how they are. Like, it's gross.
It's a bunch of different types. They're just like anybody else. There's all different types of.
There's lots of different types of people on any Native American reservation. There are conservatives, there are liberals, and the liberals are as annoying as you can imagine. There are people who, listen to Joe Rogan and work at the gas station, just like anywhere else. Like, and the idea that if we hadn't taken the land from the Native American, I'm using quotes because I don't think that very simplistic view of colonialism is worth entertaining. But if we just didn't take their land, that they would be living like that, like that the technology
that they don't want to develop.
Yeah. They would have not developed technology. Like, they wouldn't be driving around in cars. They would still be, hunting with a hatchet to go get the wild buffalo. Like, it's racist. It's fucked up. And it is. The fact that people act like it's like anything other than that fucking astounds me. It's racist. And not like
it's woke Ouroboros.
I was just gonna say, it's not even woke Ouroboros racism. It's just flat out racism. Like, it's bald-faced racism that isn't even hiding the fact that it's racism. It's just people have been told that it is basically a woke Ouroboros type of racism.
Peter, your white privilege is showing right now.
It's gross.
And I think you need to recenter yourself.
I need to listen to the lived experience. Oh wait, that's how I got to this position.
Yeah, right. Whoops! I actually did what you suggested, and I listened to the most directly affected.
Which is, again, exactly what people should do if they want to see what degrowth does, because your story.
That's right.
You need to tell your story.
I need to tell my story. I'm a degrowth. I'm living in
degrowth Nanette.
I'm living in the degrowth universe. There's lots of bike lanes that no one uses that make traffic more dangerous, and
It's insane. Like, if you actually follow the advice that they say, you immediately can tell that everything liberals say about Native Americans is total horseshit. And
Yeah.
it's disgusting that they're allowed to do that at like a mainstream level and no one says anything.
Yeah.
It's so fucked up. And like the thing is, like the pushback you might get from a conservative on this too is it doesn't fully grasp why it's racist, but they will call it racist. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that was a tangent. I get worked up over that.
Well, a lot
It
of
pisses
people,
me off,
a lot of
'cause I've known
people,
a lot of people
on the left, right, or Marxist Leninists or online socialists will get caught up in like this idea of national sovereignty, that it's an argument about national sovereignty, and it's not, though. It's about energy, really. Is this whole idea of land back is connected to the NGO, the woke NGO industry that wants to degrow, that wants to reduce energy capacity, that wants to, I mean, it's a lot of it comes from Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett's a big player in all this. Not a Jew. Not a Jew.
Yeah, he's a finance capitalist. Berkshire Hathaway is a massive holding company worth $700 billion. It's huge. He's incredibly rich, and yeah, it's that's finance capital. That's how that works. If finance capital is a massive intermediate of loans, stock, and speculation that is playing all sides so they can come out on top.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just both sides, it's every side. Like, they own everything. Like, Berkshire Hathaway owns natural gas production. Berkshire Hathaway owns trains.
They own nuclear. I mean, they own
nuclear.
Yeah. I mean, they own it all.
If any of these things works on any level, they win. That's how, like, and it doesn't have to be profitable, as we've seen with Twitter. Like, Twitter existed for what, 12 years without reporting any kind of earnings at all.
Yeah.
And now we know it's never turned a profit.
Well, most of these big tech Silicon Valley companies are not profitable. And I think that's something that's left out of the conversation a lot, is all the leftists kind of want to stay on this very old, archaic notion of like fighting capitalism and fighting the profit. Fighting profit.
Is bad. It's these greedy capitalists.
Yeah, right. Which is why
it's not that. It has nothing to do with that, and everything to do with preserving that contradiction that I mentioned.
Yeah.
And that doesn't require profit. Profit is downstream of that because you retain the product of the thing that is created with the means to produce.
Yeah.
That is what really, really defines capitalism. The capitalists own the means to produce, and they own the product that comes out of the means to produce based on all the work of all the other people.
Mm-hmm.
That is, and if they don't want to take that thing to market and try to make money on it, if they don't want to profit on it, they don't have to. They keep it. They could put it in. They could put it in their back. They could bury it in their backyard. You make a bunch of steel, and you're like, ha! I just don't want anyone to have this. They can. Like, that's how that works. That's the real problem of capitalism. It's that they own and control everything. It's not that they make a bunch of money. The fact that they make a bunch of money is downstream of them owning and controlling everything.
Right. They'd probably rather have less trouble of like producing all this stuff and just let me just sit here and own things, and you guys can just go on your little farms and be self-sufficient. Why don't you peasants just become self-sufficient?
That's why they're so mad that you can get a verified check mark for $8 now.
Yeah.
It's because you don't have to do this based off of who you know and social capital and all these more neo-feudal type dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
It's because you can pay $8 for it.
Right.
Like, anybody can do that, and they hate that. Like, it's disgusting. It removes all social proof aspects of it,
And in their minds, that's the worst possible thing because that's what they're transitioning towards.
It's money actually acting like it should, right? Which is ideally what we think of it, right? And people who are sort of believe in capitalism and the free market, whatever, they think that you vote with your dollars, right? And that like the money is sort of this intermediary, which is an equalizer, right? It acts as something that is just this neutral middleman that is like, I'm going to trade you for you. And then that is the transaction. That is what it's worth on the market. If you strip that, suddenly it's hard to even tell what value things have, right? And it's more dictated by the feudal lords, the people who are already owning everything. They have less use for this intermediary, which is money.
Which is why simply abolishing profit or abolishing money is so fucking useless on its own. Like people say, well, we just got to get rid of these things. We got to get rid of the profit motive. We got to get rid of money. Well, you still have the ownership dynamic. Right. So you're still operating at the behest of somebody who can coerce you to act the way they want you to. It's that simple. You don't have the option of meeting your needs in any other way than the way that owner, which we could call a capitalist now, we could call them a neo-feudalist, we could call them a feudal lord back in the day, we could call little Lord Peter Buffett, like with his new regional currency. What is that fucking called?
The Hudson Valley Current.
Yeah, that's literally like neo-feudal bucks. It's you. Yeah. You live in my feudal realm and you use my monopoly money.
And it's totally useless too, because all the stuff that this microcurrency, which degrowthers, small is beautiful people are really into, all that it can be used for here locally is like, if you go on their website and see who signed up to actually accept these things, it's all service work. So what it is people just trading favors for each other. So it's not a real economy. It's literally just people
can't self-sustain in any way.
It's metaphorically people just sucking each other's dicks. That's all it is. It's like,
and it's not even really people sucking each other's dicks. So, yeah. I mean, you're not even really doing that.
It's like a massage for you're trading a massage for like a painting or something, or
you're watching VR porn, people. That's what you're really doing. It's weird. It's weird, folks.
Yeah. Right. And that's where like the localism too is like, localism is kind of the right wing version of degrowth. It's like this cottage core, back to the land, become self-sufficient, decentralized,
live off the grid.
Yeah, live off the grid. But that we're in an interconnected world, and that's a good thing. People say, no, that's globalism and that's bad and that's what we have to fight. Here's where, like, you know, there's a big debate about whether we should use the word globalism or not. And I think it's useful if we exchange it with imperialism, ruling elite, financial capital, World Economic Forum. Sure, those
use a synonym.
Yeah, those are the globalists. But there's people who say globalism is when you have an economy that's globally connected, and that which is a good thing. I mean, it's good.
Yeah, those are the conditions for socialism.
Right. Yeah, right. How do we all get to this point of abundance? Is that, I mean, that's why everyone looks at what is the name of the, I can't think of the island country that is socialist.
Nicaragua?
No, that is like right. Cuba.
Cuba.
Everyone looks at. I couldn't think of Cuba.
No, that's okay. I can't believe I said Nicaragua before Cuba.
Is Nicaragua an island?
I don't know. I proved myself maybe as dumb as you.
I'm not dumb. I just forgot the word. No,
I am dumb.
No, I'm dumb.
Didn't remember, I don't know whether Nicaragua is an island or not.
But so degrowthers fetishize Cuba because they say Cuba has become like this self-sufficient island, or even North Korea to some degree, although they don't fetishize North Korea as much, but they say, oh, well, Cuba is this ideal because they do regenerative this and that, and degrowthers love Cuba but they're forced to do, did that out of necessity. They don't want to be like this self-sufficient island. They would do much better if they were able to trade with the rest of the world. They only did that just to survive. So this idea that like everywhere can just be its own little self-sufficient nook, it is antithetical to what we're
That's the whole
towards.
Decentralization argument, more or less, too.
Yeah.
It's just like when we addressed this when we talked about imperialism and the supply chains and all of that being like the stupid version of the conditions arising that we need for a socialism, which is a planned economy that is unfortunately being planned by a bunch of anarchic weirdos who all hate each other.
I mean, that's the multipolar world order, right? We're planning it all together.
Yes, exactly. That should be ultimately what we want, is actually planning it, not the way that we are now. We want these supply chains. We want this infrastructure. We just don't want a bunch of capitalists who are driven by maintaining their ownership of these various infrastructures. They're driven entirely by maintaining their position. Yeah. That is, at some point, becomes their interest. We don't want that. We want all of this infrastructure to exist. We want that version of globalism where everything is just connected globally. We want that to exist.
We want rational globalism, not anarchic.
Exactly.
Anarchism.
We want rationally planned globalism.
Yes, right.
Like probably a way to get people to hate us is saying that, actually. I think somebody would be like, that's Klaus Schwab's shit.
It's all word games at this point. Yeah, it's all word games.
But that's ultimately what we want. We want that global infrastructure. We want that connectedness. We just want it planned accountably to the common person.
And for all these superpowers to be operating at the behest of the people and what's best for their nations and for all of society, right? Win-win cooperation. The Chinese motto is, I think that's the way forward. The degrowth Malthusian paradigm puts forward us or them, nature or human. What's the word?
Zero-sum game.
Zero-sum game or ultimatum. It gives us an ultimatum of nature or humans, right? And China does not do that. China says, no, we're gonna be an ecological society that helps humanity prosper, and we need to move in the direction of win-win cooperation, win-win with nature, win-win with the rest of the world, and that's it. It's very simple. It's a very simple idea. I think you guys are gonna love it.
So the takeaway from this stream for bread tubers is that
sum it up, Peter.
Nicaragua is an island.
That's
what I think. It's not an island. And Cuba doesn't have a name. Those are the only relevant pieces of information that have been conveyed throughout this entire stream.
We're very smart Americans.
Like we said all of that stuff. Don't pay any attention to that. At about 2 hours and 50 minutes in, they think that Nicaragua's an island and can't remember Cuba's name. Ha!
Oh man. Oh. They're gonna sit through the whole thing too and just wait for something. I'm getting hungry.
I'm getting tired.
I feel like we could go on longer. I'm really looking forward. On your marks, we all learned something. Very good, very good. On your marks makes great videos. Check out his channel.
Oh, definitely. Agreed.
I'm really looking forward to talking to you and Caleb about your upcoming video, which is going to be great.
I'm hoping over the next couple of days I can get it to you guys so that you've seen it prior to us doing this.
I feel like I've seen all the parts at this point, just not all together.
A lot of them you have. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes though.
It's a big one.
There's a lot. Like this stream I think has gone longer than the
Yeah,
documentary.
we're almost at 3 hours.
But by minutes.
Yeah.
Like we haven't reached an hour longer than the documentary yet. But I will say this. The book Less Sucks it's just an adaptation of the script of the documentary. So if people are interested in what's said in the documentary, the book is it's there. Any order helps because like telling Amazon to shove it down people searching Degrowth's throat is a good idea. But long story short, you and Caleb I want to do a stream with right before the premiere of it. We'll probably talk a lot about the book. We'll probably talk a lot about the doc and also a lot of this stuff. You're right. I think we probably could keep going for like hours.
That's why I was like nervous and excited for the stream because I'm like, we have so much to say on this topic and we could talk for just like hours and hours. And I want to make sure we cover all of it. But we should do more on this topic. Maybe even like a monthly degrowth stream or something. I mean, I know you and I, we've already done 2 streams. Like we did 2 packed episodes on degrowth too. So we've covered this topic so much.
We could do that topic endlessly though, because it just keeps developing. They keep trying to come up with some way. Like if the book or the documentary gets popular, they're going to come up with something other than lowering energy production to say they want to get rid of people. Like it's that simple. Like that's what the whole thing is about, the through line from Malthus through eugenics to degrowth. And that through line is, if you think the world is overpopulated and you want to degrow the force that keeps the population large, either of those things, you have to ask, who do you get rid of?
Yeah.
You can't not ask that question, because whether you're just directly like forcibly sterilizing people or killing people, or you're cutting off energy production, you still have to ask, like, who gets the brunt of it?
Yep.
And the Nazis said the Jews. The degrowthers are saying poor people. Like, it's that simple.
Or America-KKKans.
Yeah.
White settler colonial.
Poor America KKKans.
Yeah.
Because again, like you've seen what happened after Indian Point's closure. Like energy prices have skyrocketed in New York State, and other than New York City, the people in New York State have pretty normal incomes, and they're getting the squeeze. Like, and I know that there's a lot of poor people in New York City as well, but the mean income there is much higher than outside the city, and anybody who makes less is just gonna get squeezed for more. End scene.
Slow clap.
I'll see you all later.
I should just hit end stream.